evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 139th take, live from the HF Barcelona studios of Euless, Texas. I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a show that almost didn't get started, but it's here today, and we're so excited to have you all. I'm so excited to have this guest on. I've had him on before. This is his second time returning to ELOSOFUMARTAKES, but it is about him tonight. It's all about him and his story. You guys know how I love the story behind the story, but before we get to that story behind the story, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible, and that, of course, is our sponsors. Tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate announced just a couple weeks ago the release of the Herrera Esteli Hoala Tienda Exclusiva for Hawaiian retailers. The limited release was available after the Drew Estate virtual event that was hosted by Master Blender Willie Herrera on September 26th. The Herrera Esteli Hoala Tienda Exclusiva is a 4x78 and by 46 Corona, Petite Corona, wrapped in a toothy Mexican San Andreas Capo with undisclosed binder and filler leaves, hand selected by the Master Blender Willie Herrera himself for their strength and exquisite taste. The Hoala was inspired by a trip to the island of Maui, where Willie watched the sun rise over the clouds on top of the Haleakala crater, which I'm sure I still butchered that name. Hoala translates to rise up, a name given to match the stronger profile of this cigar in a vitola that is a perfect morning smoke to rise up and greet the sun. So check out the Hoala Tienda Exclusiva from Hawaii, exclusively for Hawaiian retailers. So get to know your brothers and sisters of the smoke and of the leaf in Hawaii and get your hands on some of that. We're also excited to announce that tonight's show is also sponsored by Oveja Negra Brands, 4 unique companies who share a passion to provide innovative cigars for the next generation of cigar enthusiasts. Black Label Trading Company, Blackwork Studio, Dissonant, and Emilio are combining premium tobacco with an artisanal touch. Oveja Negra, where arts and tobacco collide. Join the flock and visit OvejaNegraCigars.com to learn more. And welcome, everyone, to the 139th take of ELOSOFUMARTAKES. It is my esteemed pleasure to welcome in tonight's guest, who is sponsored by United Cigar, Smoke One Today, and Start Living United, Mr. Ben Lee of Stogie Review. Ben, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, man. How's everything going over there?
Oh, it's fantastic, man. You know, it's really funny. We're like probably 10 minutes apart from each other, but yet we're still
I know.
Don't let anyone say that we're still not social distancing here in Texas. Don't let anyone dare say that.
Yeah, we got to maintain all the social standards we got to have for this epidemic that we're going through, or pandemic, actually.
No joke, no joke. It's so excited to have you on tonight, Ben. Had you on before with a couple of other guys in cigar media, Matt Tive, How About That Cigar, Aaron Loomis of Developing Palates, and it was a really great show, really insightful, really in depth. But tonight we're going to go in depth, but a little bit different. We're going to be talking to you exclusively about your story, your background, how you came to this incredible industry that we both love. But we kind of have to, before we kind of get into all the nitty gritty and the deep and all that stuff, the obligatories, man. What are we smoking tonight?
Tonight I was working at the Aganorsa Supreme Leaf, and I got these through a friend of a lot of us on Facebook, Eric Eichhorn. He actually works at Cigars and More in Birmingham, and it's run pretty good friends of mine. And I mentioned on Coop's show that this is a cigar that I've been going after for quite a while now, but I could not find them.
I remember you saying that now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I could not find them. And even Terrence said, oh, they're at this shop, they're at that shop. But by the time I called them or got a hold of them, they were already gone again. Then I got a message from them and said, hey, we got some of the shop. Would you like to send you some? I'm like, yes, please. So the guy there was able to secure me a 5-pack, and I PayPal'd the money for them, and here they are. I got them about probably 3 weeks ago, and so, but I kind of put them up because it's been so dry and cool here for so long in Dallas once I moved here. So 107 degrees with like 90% humidity.
Yeah, but tonight you're enjoying the good old outdoors, man. What is it? It's nice outside.
68 degrees, and I think like 35% humidity.
Perfect.
So I thought on your show, let's go ahead and bust out the first one of these and give it a shot. And so far, I'm really enjoying this cigar.
68 degrees. Where's your cardigan, man? You're gonna freeze out there.
No.
Well, I'm really excited. Yeah, and you know what? That's actually I think it's a really good call for that cigar. I really enjoyed, and you're probably into the first couple of puffs into it already, and I'll
Yeah.
get your thoughts here in a second. But I really enjoyed that cigar through the first half. Got to say, it really ended poorly for me, and it's not on the cigar. I'm really not making excuses for it. I think I mean, I smoked it off the truck, man, which I try not to do anyway. And
Yeah.
I just think it hadn't acclimated to again the heat we were talking about. And then I set some aside, and I returned to it actually about a week ago. And my hunch was absolutely right. So as you can tell, like I said, I'm not making excuses for it. That the cigar performed exceptionally better. So that was nice. So I'm really interested to get your thoughts. But I know you've got one of these handy. But I'm my first cigar for the night is going to be the Timeless Panamericana, which was originally a TAA release from Nat Sherman. We'll be talking a little bit about Nat Sherman tonight, but from our good friend Michael Herklotz. I asked him to, in his final moments there at Nat Sherman International, I asked him to put together um, a little order for me. Uh, I never got to visit the historic townhouse or anything like that, but this was a cigar that I absolutely loved. I said, "Hey, your picks, Michael, get me, fix me up. Here's what I can spend." But I said, "You absolutely have to have some of these in there," and he didn't disappoint. I'm really excited to light this up with you tonight because I know you're a fan as well because you got one too.
Yeah. 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 One of my biggest cigar disappointments ever has still with the Nat Sherman Townhouse, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into disappointments, even though one of mine does include a disappointment, so um, we're both big sports fans, and I'm as my audience knows, everyone knows I'm a huge baseball nut, and I grew up. I didn't grow up with, my family didn't grow up. I didn't grow up in an extreme amount of wealth. We were blessed in a lot of different ways, but we didn't have a lot of money. And back then, cable was a luxury that you could afford to go without, and we definitely did. Went without that luxury, and so I didn't get to watch a lot of baseball. I listened to a lot of it on the radio growing up, but I didn't get to watch a lot of it. But we could always count on playoff baseball to come around and be on the network television, right? Network TV. So I
Hmm.
got to watch a lot of Braves in the '90s growing up because they were always in the postseason, and so some of my memories of the Braves, my greatest Braves memories are entrenched in those '90s games, and we'll go over mine here in a second. But I I know you're a huge Braves fan, man. So what's your top pick? What's your favorite Braves memory of all time?
Well, actually, my favorite Braves memory is just a personal one just for me. And it was when I was a kid, I played a lot of baseball, right? My dad coached my team, and he was actually was back in the day with little leagues where, like, kind of like the Bad News Bears, the Chico Bell Bonds, where like you didn't have a team name, you were had an advertiser, right?
Right, right, right.
So my dad had an electrical construction company, and he sponsored my team. And so even since I was three, that's when I started playing, t-ball basically. I played for quite a while, and I played center field, right? And I just remember going, when we got done with the game, the big thing was we would always go to the concession stand, buy a couple packs of baseball cards and some of that super bubble, yellow and green bubble gum to eat all the time, right? To chew on and go, and we'd open the cards up and trade. And my favorite player, because I played center field, was Dale Murphy. I absolutely adore Dale Murphy. I thought he was the greatest player ever, right?
Well,
So
he should be in the Hall of Fame. Let's just clear that up right now.
the 1,000%. It's ridiculous that he's not. But so fast forward, it's 1991, and my dad decides to take my sister and I and my mom to Atlanta and go see two Braves games. And I'll never forget them.
What
The
season was
first
this? I'm sorry.
1991,
Oh, okay. Okay, here we go.
yeah, the good year. So now remember, up to this point, the Braves were atrocious.
Atrocious, yeah. Worst
I'm
place.
talking about god awful, right?
This was the worst of first year,
Yeah.
91.
So we, didn't really expect, you know, anything at these games. Like I just expect to see, I just wanted to see the players and go to a real, Major League Baseball game. Because like I said, I collected baseball cards. So at the time, I didn't really. I loved the Braves. I loved Del Murphy was my favorite player, but I loved it kind of like the way kids now do with football and basketball, mainly the basketball fans, where they gravitate to just a player, right? They're not a fan of, say, the Lakers, but they love LeBron or somebody, right? They just
No,
that's so, and that's kind of what
no,
it was with baseball.
no, exactly. And that, I mean, that's how I became I mean, I'm a Boston area sports fan for
Yeah,
everything except for football. And that's because of Reggie White. I'm a Packers
yeah,
fan because of Reggie White. I followed him from the Eagles to the Packers, and then my love affair with the Packers started. But it was because of Reggie White. Yeah, so I'm with you.
right. So one of my favorite players at the time then too was also Wade Boggs. I actually have a Wade Boggs jersey that my mom and dad bought me when they went to actually went to an international boat show for work, because my uncle was a CEO of a boat company. And they went up there and they went to Fenway Stadium just to buy me a Wade Boggs jersey. And I still have it. I still have that
Oh,
jersey. Yeah. So
awesome.
anyway,
So the good jersey
so
when he was playing for the Sox instead of when he was playing for the Yankees.
yes,
Yeah, okay, good call.
100. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that part. That don't exist. Yeah. So anyway, so we go there, right? And I remember the first game we were playing. It was St. Louis Cardinals, and the Braves won 7-5. And I remember that night they were handing out these Atlanta Braves hats. They were kind of like, it's funny because they were like old crappy cheap Chinese hats or whatever, but on the bill it said, presented by Coca-Cola and Winn Dixie on the underneath the bill, it's advertisement.
Right.
But I wore that hat, dude, nonstop after that. But anyway, the memory part of it was, and it might seem a little silly, but I just remember going to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, right? And it's at the terrace level, right in the middle, right. So we're walking up. I remember going to the tunnel, right? And I see, like, I'm walking down the tunnel. I can see it like it just happened just a few hours ago. I can see like a little speck of light, right? And as I'm walking down the tunnel, it's opening up, and I see more and more and more of the field, and I can see the players out there practicing, throwing the ball around, and just like getting into that tunnel, and I'm just in awe, speechless, can't move, just like, oh my God, I'm really here. I'm watching the Braves. This is the most amazing point of my life, and so far at this point right here. It was almost like a magical spiritual experience or something walking in, you know?
Oh, it is watching I still contend that that's the case it is today. And when we finally get to go back to a ballpark, I'm going to feel the same. I'm going to feel probably even more so the same, man. I mean, it is, I mean, baseball stadiums are cathedrals, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a magical spiritual moment being in there. And, people could think I'm lame and weird and, but I just, there's, it's, the often stolen quote from Moneyball, man. How can you not be romantic about baseball? It's beautiful.
Yeah, and
So,
it's weird because like I'm a huge fan, mainly baseball, football, and soccer, the true football, right? That's my three big sports.
it's the only thing I don't like
Okay,
about you, Ben, but that's fine.
but to me, but I'll tell you, baseball to me, I don't know, maybe because I played a lot of baseball, it does have a magic to it, you know. So I never could play football because I went to a very, very small private school and they didn't never had a football team, so I couldn't play. Matter of fact, they didn't have a baseball team. When I actually got into the 10th grade, me and my college roommate, we went to high school together. We was actually able to raise money to get the baseball team brought back. But the problem was they started it only for the junior high. So we brought the
Right.
team back, and neither one of us could play.
Oh,
We
crazy.
were we were in high school at the time. So, but now they have it. They started at junior high so they could develop the players to have them in high school, and then bring other players in and stuff. So
Mhm.
they still play. They're still playing now. But to me, baseball has a magic to it that the other sports just don't have. And like I said, maybe it's because I played it, and it was so fun. Like I remember every game I played was like so much fun. You know, but
Games I sat even on the bench were fun.
yeah.
Like, I was a regular player, all throughout childhood for the most part. I was blessed with enough talent and skill to be able to do that. But even games where I sat on the bench, I was, God, it was so much fun. Really enjoyed it. Um, really, really enjoyed
But
just playing the game. Absolutely. I mean, a couple of my favorite Braves moments, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit before the show, was the 10-day, the 10-day dream that John Smoltz had in that '91 season, right? So
mhm,
worst to first, they battle against Pittsburgh in the NLCS, and John Smoltz pitches an amazing Game 7. You know, um, Sid Bream wins Game 6. And then with that story, but then John Smoltz pitches a gem in Game 7, gets him to the World Series, and then 10 days later, everyone knows that story, but they don't know it from the John Smoltz side. They know it from the Jack Morris side, who he was facing. Jack Morris goes 10 shutout innings, but John Smoltz was dealing too, man. He went 8 scoreless too, or excuse me, 9 scoreless too. So, and then they pulled him. He was the only one. He didn't pitch the 10th. So that was crazy. But then, speaking of good pitching, and probably the most boring game to any other non-baseball fan in 1995, when Tom Glavine, goes 8 scoreless, and
yeah,
then Wohlers closes it out, and David Justice's solo home run makes it a 1-0 game to give the Braves their first series in 38 years. In fact, their first series
yeah,
since too. So it's been their, 1995 was that only World Series. So, man, not to rub salt in the wound or anything like that, but I mean, watching that rotation, watching those play, I mean, because that was some hell of a lineup. Let's not forget the lineup that Glavine faced that night too, when he shut them down. Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez, Eddie Murray,
yeah,
Albert Bell, who's just a monster in more ways than one, but definitely at the plate. And even
yeah.
even even Omar Vizquel, who actually batted 260 that year, and Glavine shut them down. I mean, just unbelievable. But I mean, what was it like to watch those? I mean, those amazing pitchers, Glavine and Maddox and Smoltz and Avery. We even talked about Kent Mercker threw a no hitter. I mean, it must have been awesome to be a fan of those teams in the '90s, even though, like I said, only
Yeah,
one series to show for it.
I know it's so unbelievable, man. Like when I look back on it now, I'm like, how the hell was there only one World Series come out of that? I mean, it's just unfathomable because you're right. We talked about earlier, like it's probably one of the best starting, pitching rotations ever. And it's like, how the hell? But they didn't really have the, they didn't have the big bats like the Yankees had during that time.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Like I just the only one I have to say that, okay, the 1991 World Series, like that was heartbreaking, right? But I wasn't truly upset on that when they lost that one. And the reason is there was a special player to me on that Twins team, Kirby Puckett.
Yeah.
Now, Kirby Puckett was one of my favorite players ever. And like I mentioned before, I collected baseball cards, right? And I have a few left that didn't get destroyed during Hurricane Katrina. But I remember back in the day, you get the Beckett baseball guide, right? And in the back it would have all the addresses where you could send, cards in to players, and they'll autograph them. And I used to send a ton of cards in, and very rarely, if ever, did I get a one back. But one person, I sent 3 cards in, I got 3 cards back, Kirby Puckett.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, right, yep. And I don't have them because they're the ones they got lost during Katrina. But I will never, ever, ever forget that. So when the Braves lost the '91 World Series, I was heartbroken for the Braves, but I was so happy that Kirby Puckett won a World Series that it kind of almost offset it a little bit. But that was also the infamous game, during I can't remember what game it was, where Kent Herbeck pulled Ron Gant off of first base and tagged him out at the end of the inning. And
Oh,
they didn't
yeah.
call it. He pulled. I'll never forget it. He lifted his leg up and then tagged him. And at the first base, someone was like standing right there and didn't. He just said "out," and that was it. I'm like, what?
Yeah. No, I remember.
Like,
I remember that too. And it's interesting because I was a lot younger. Not a lot, but I mean, contextually speaking, in my childhood, I was younger than you.
yeah,
Um, I mean, but I remember these games. I mean, I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I remember details of these games, like that, plays like that are just etched in memory and everything. I'm going to digress for 1 second, but just to kind of add on to your Kirby Puckett story, there's
yeah,
some great players in this game that are like that. And I remember in high school, this was before. This was actually the year before he became the World Series hero, Luis Gonzalez. You remember 0-1 against the
yes,
Yankees, the Diamondbacks. Okay, so um, I was in journalism in high school. Wrote for the school newspaper. Yeah, I was one of those kids, and we went to this convention in Phoenix, Arizona, and me and a group of friends walked to and had lunch at the TGI Fridays that was actually in the stadium uh, during a day where they were playing away. The Diamondbacks were playing away, and one of my classmates, a really good friend of mine at the time, her name was Priscilla and Dominguez, and she just obsessed, not creepy, but obsessed with Luis Gonzalez.
yeah.
Just absolutely enthralled with him as a player, and just thought he was like, I mean, how people contemporary of our fathers used to talk about like Mickey Mantle, like that kind of
Hmm.
infatuation and love. And we were there and we were talking to our waiter who was like, again, at TGI Fridays, and we were telling him about her love for Luis Gonzalez, and she carried with her on this trip, just in case she happened to run into him somewhere, a baseball card of Luis Gonzalez. I mean, it was like her most treasured possession. I'm not kidding. Like she held on to this thing. It was in plexiglass and everything, and it was like she had it like, I mean, it kept it closer to her than a wallet.
Yeah.
And she the waiter, I don't know how the waiter did. He's like, hey, yeah, I know him. I mean, he's like, we're not really great friends, but I run into him all the time. He's a great guy. He's everything you're exactly talking about. What if I could get that card signed for you? And this is back before cell phones and Facebook and all this other stuff, right? So he gets her address. She gives the card to him. I couldn't believe it. And a week later, when we got home, she has it in the mail. And it's signed. And then he actually sent her a package of a bunch of other swag and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was just, man, and baseball is filled with players like that. Just really, really
Yeah,
awesome.
I've actually met him, Luis Gonzalez. He played college baseball at University of South Alabama, which is in Mobile, Alabama, which is right next to where I was born and raised at.
Oh, well, man, small world. That's funny that I just pulled
Yeah,
that story out of the hat. That's a lot. That's awesome. Yeah, I
yeah.
always liked him as a player.
I tell you, this one I got a similar story to that, but it's about a football player that you would never suspect act like this, right? Jeremy Shockey, right? Everybody
Really?
that yeah, so Kate, yeah, everybody knows Jeremy Shockey for being that brash, just crazy tight end, right? Out of Miami. He played for the Saints for several years, right?
Right.
Everybody kind of knows him as kind of being an asshole, let's be honest, right? And so we're in New Orleans eating lunch at a place called Lucy's Retired Surfer Bar with my wife and one of her friends from the military. And she's there with her little daughter. And we go in, you walk in and it's you kind of go through where the bar area is at, go through this little tunnel like hallway, and go to the back where we're eating lunch where all the tables are at. So I'm talking to the waitress and stuff as we're waiting and going in, and she's seeing this. We're talking about the Saints, and all this. She's a big Saints fan too. We go and sit down, we're eating and all this stuff, and we get up, I pay the bill, and start walking back out. She passes us in the hallway without even looking at me. She just walks right past me and says, Jeremy Shockey's at the bar, and just keeps moving. And I'm like, holy shit, Jeremy Shockey's at the bar. Like, really? So I walk out, and I look over and I see Jeremy Shockey sitting at the bar. And it's so funny because it looks like a beach bum, right? He's in like these kind of ratty khaki shorts. He's got one of those, I don't remember these from the 90s, but they had those like Mexican hoodie pullovers that kind of like, they look like they were knitted, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So he's wearing one of those in a big bucket hat, right? And he's on a cell phone. He's hunched over, got his hat pulled down, and he's trying to be real incognito, just having a beer, just chilling, right? So I don't get starstruck pretty much from anybody. It's really rare, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, I see him. I wasn't going to approach it because it looked like he didn't want to be disturbed, right? But I see my wife's friend's daughter. She's like, oh my God. Like she's like, I think 9 or 10 or something. She's really young. So I'm like, I look at her, I'm like, man, maybe I should go say something to her, just like say, just introduce her daughter, right? Her name was Sydney. So I'm like, hell with it, let's go do it. And my wife, she's like, oh my God, that is oh my God, I can't believe there's Jeremy Shockey sitting at the bar. So the funny part is Jeremy Shockey sitting there with his backup, right? It was the guy, if I remember right, his name was Tyler Lorenzen. I think it was his name. He was the quarterback for the University of Connecticut back when Connecticut had, at that one time, in all their history, they were really, really good, like the early 2000s, something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, he wasn't drafted, but he got signed by the Saints, went on the practice squad, and then I guess he became like a second or third string tight end for the Saints. He was sitting there next to him. So I go up and I see them two. They're kind of just starting to chit chat a little bit. I walk up and says, hey Jeremy, I don't need me to disturb you. I know you're just trying to chill, whatever. But I was wanting to know, would you mind taking a picture with this little girl? You're her favorite player, and she thinks it might be her only opportunity. She's like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, please come on over here. He lifts his hat up. He smiles. He takes a picture with her and stuff, and but just before that, the funny part of this whole story was my wife thinks she sees him, right? And she walks up like, I'm going to get a picture with Jeremy Shockey. She walks up to the other guy, Lorenzen, thinking that was Jeremy Shockey to get a picture. And it was so damn funny because she walked up to us and said, you mind if I have a picture with you? And I'm trying to grab her like, that's not it. Oh, too late. And that guy's like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, he's like, oh, this is cool. So I was thinking, and I look at Jeremy Shockey. He looks at me like, what? And he looks at me, and I'm like, he sees me doing it. So he starts giggling, like just to himself. And as I'm taking a picture, he like leans over to get in the picture. Like, so
at least you got to take a picture with.
Yeah,
that's funny.
So she goes like, and he starts giggling. It was so funny. But anyway, after that, he takes a picture. He says a couple things to her, and it's made her day. She is like on cloud 9 in heaven. Like, she's met Jeremy Shockey, and he's talked to her, right? And we're leaving. I'm thinking to myself, I really appreciate it. That's nice of you to do that and stuff. And as I'm kind of starting to walk away, I look in the corner, and there's a little boy that saw that and says, "Oh my!" He realizes he's probably 6 or 7. He's like, "Oh my God, that's Jeremy Shockey!"
It's a domino effect here.
Yeah. So I see that. I'm like, I kind of motion like, "Come here." And he kind of walks up real shy, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's just Jeremy Shockey." It's starting to pull down. He like this. Oh, hey! He pulls it up. He talks to that little kid, and his mom takes a picture with him. Nicest cat ever. Totally opposite. I guess he's one of those players that's just so passionate. He's so just driven that when he gets on the field, he just becomes like a maniac.
Yeah.
But he could have just said, basically, get out of here. He was like, oh yeah, please come on. Took all the time that we wanted. And never once did he say like, okay, that's enough or nothing. it wasn't until we were like, I appreciate it, thank you, and walked away that he kind of went back and started drinking his beer and stuff. But we tried to make it to where we weren't making a big deal, so people didn't notice that was Jeremy Johnson.
That's funny.
But I've met a few Saints, but that was the one that really, I was like, wow, that was really cool. Honestly, I was expecting to say, nah, man, I can't do that right now. I'm probably just trying to just chill, but he didn't.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. So I think some of the ones that catch you off guard, and then some of the ones you expect to be really cool are really, really jerks and stuff. And they always, what's the old mantra? Never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Well, I promise, guys, we're going to talk about cigars tonight. But but just last note, I did meet my childhood baseball hero, who was not a Boston Red Sox, but he was a Sox for most of his career. He was a White Sox. His name was Frank Thomas, and he.
Oh, Big Hurt.
I met him in my 20s. I met him on his way out. He was playing for the Oakland A's. I was working a Texas Rangers game, interning for ESPN, and I didn't give a shit about professionalism. I just walked up to him. I had a ball, like I need and your autograph, and he was so gracious, and it was such a moment for me. So it's really awesome. It's really awesome when they can, again, I was in my 20s. I wasn't 7. I wasn't a kid anymore, but he still brought out the kid in me, and it's great to have that. But
yeah, I had a kind of a similar incident too. For me, personally, was when I was in high school. We used to in Mississippi had this thing called youth legislature. I don't know if they do that in Texas or anywhere else, but
yeah,
basically they do have it here. Okay,
yeah.
So for people that don't know, it's basically where usually it's the debate team or government or whatever, where you basically go to the state capital, which for us was Jackson, Mississippi, and you have like a mock legislature, right? We have, the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of the treasury, all that kind of stuff, right? We elect each other. We write bills, and we have to write them just like they would do it, right? And it's a really big deal, right? So my private school was actually like a kind of like a power school for that kind of stuff. Like we could we done it had done it so much, had so many people going to it that we could sway votes, like determine if a bill would get passed or not. And if your quote unquote student governor signed the bill, it would actually go to the governor to be considered. So anyway, so we're in Jackson for this thing, and it happened that at the same time they were having some kind of charity event there at the hotel that we were staying at.
Sure.
And there was a ton of professional sports players from baseball, basketball, football, all the sports, right? And I recognize a few of them. I was pointing about some of the people there that weren't really sports fans. And anyway, long story short, I'm getting on the elevator to go down to go to one of our sessions, and as I walk on, Herschel Walker's in the elevator. Now
that's random.
Yeah, so people don't like. I'm a big Saints fan. Obviously, I'm wearing the shirt now, but I also grew up a massive Cowboys fan, right? Because I was born in 1975. So when I was a kid, it was all about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys.
Sure.
Always, right? If you was a Southern kid, you always cheer for the Cowboys. I mean, for one, they were just cool because they had all the awesome players, and you had the Dallas cheerleaders that was always on everything, on TV and magazines and everything, right? So in that time, the Saints were atrocious, like no win seasons, right? You people would be at the game with bags on their heads, literally. It's still a joke to this day about that. But anyway, so I love my family. We're all big Saints fans, so I love the Saints, but I also love the Cowboys. Herschel Walker was one of my favorite Cowboys ever. And I walk on there, I'm like, oh, holy shit, that's Herschel Walker. And at first, I got on the elevator, and I stood beside him. I was just trying to be Mr. Cool. Don't lose your shit, right? That was the thing. And I said, you started going down a couple floors. I said, I can't do it. Mr. Walker, I just want to let you know you're one of my favorite players of all time, and it's just an honor to be on this elevator with you. And he's like, oh, man, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I always enjoy meeting my fans, and, shook my hand. This is the time when there was no cell phones or
right.
that. I remember
you didn't have a Polaroid around your neck,
No, but what I did have, I don't know if you remember that, but Kodak had those little disposable cameras,
right?
Oh,
of course. Oh, you had one of those?
I had one of those. So I have no idea. It sucks because I got a picture of but actually was my college roommate was on there on the same elevator with me. He actually took the picture with that camera, but that camera went missing during that trip. So I don't know
Oh,
where the hell I went. So I didn't get the picture. But that was like one of the coolest moments ever was meeting Herschel Walker. And he was as nice as you could be too. But this is way after he retired, it was a really cool moment. But it's always cool meeting, you know, meeting the players. They're really good.
absolutely. For sure. Well, as we were talking about, a small world with, your connection to Luis Gonzalez and my story, there's probably someone watching the show or will listen to the show that worked at a random Walgreens where someone turned in this random camera and they have that picture laying around. They're going to send it to you now. So wishful thinking.
That would be awesome, actually.
And that, it's interesting with your Boy State experience and writing bills and stuff. And, we're going to get into your writing here and with, now into the segue of going into tonight's major points, brought to you by Wood Butcher, Maine, introducing durable and attractive wooden creations for your kitchen, backyard grill, and home using native Maine wood and other exotic wood species. Wood Butcher, Maine products include butcher box, cutting boards, coasters, grill grate cleaners, and also Fumar favorite, the red oak cigar ashtray and cocktail coaster, plus many more. The Wood Butcher, Maine's team passion for food, the Pine Tree State, and craftsmanship of the highest quality show in absolutely every piece. Visit woodbutchermaine.com. Yes, that's woodbutchermaine.com to explore the current collection. So that is tonight's major point. And Ben, we're going to start about talk about you're getting started in media. Cigar media, that is. But before we get into that, I was doing some research on the show, and I'm you know what I'm going to do? I am going to get into some edgy territory, man, because we talk about off the record, on the record conversation all the time. And you and I were having a conversation a few days ago, and I'm going to get into edgy waters here, man, because I was reading your bio, and you have a Ron White quote on there. And your Ron White quote, of course, that you've got on your post is, I've got a great cigar collection. Actually, it's not a collection because that would simply imply that I wasn't going to smoke every last one of them. But I'm going to call you out, my friend, because we were talking about our collections, and you were saying how you were loading up for the move to Texas here a couple weeks ago, and you discovered all this amazing shit that you had.
Yeah.
And so it turns out you're a collector after all, it seems.
Yeah, it's quite ridiculous, actually. I mean, we joke that my little home shop in Tallahassee, it's Parkway Cigars. So we kind of tease him because he actually runs it quite well, where he just brings in the product to sell, and he doesn't overstock and nothing like that. But we joked that I had more cigars than he did in his humidor. It was out of control. I literally have and while I was in Tallahassee, I had 2 tower humidors, 2 of them in my office, slap full. Like, I don't even know how air circulated. And then I had a bunch of humidor bags, those big humidor bags, right? I probably had, at the time, I probably had 7 of those. I had 2 large, probably one of them's one's a 90 quart cooler, one was a 120 quart cooler full. I have 9 humidors. I think that's all I got. That was all I have. But I mean, it's a pain. Like, I've actually moved 3 times in 5 years. I moved from Mississippi to Houston to Tallahassee and now to Dallas. And doing all of that moving, when you have that many cigars, it is unbelievable trying to get all of that coordinated, keep them packed safe, humidified, and getting that around. So it's like I've gifted a lot of them to friends and stuff. Some stuff that I don't have a lot of crap cigars, but I got some stuff like, I mean, if I got these to smoke, I'm gonna smoke these before I smoke those, right? And I'm like, I don't need to be holding on to this stuff. So I had also a few friends of mine that are just kind of getting into cigars. So I'm like, here, you take these, you take some of these, and stuff like that, just to make the move. But during that process, I have found stuff that I totally forgot I had, which is ridiculous. If you've got so much you don't remember stuff in the back of your humidor, or you find entire boxes that you forgot you had, that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
It's a problem that most of my audience would probably love to have too, though. So I mean, So, but I mean, I digress and kid around with you because I even asked you if you could store some cigars for me just in case if I'm going to be making a move here soon. But kind of goes into our first, speaking of like first experiences and things like that too, with your moves and everything. Want to talk about your first cigar experience. Now, you actually your first cigar was an Ashton VSG, so it wasn't
Yeah,
infused or flavored or gas station or any of those things. I mean, it was a premium cigar that's still on the market
yeah.
and very popular.
Technically, it wasn't my first cigar. It was my first true cigar, right? I mean, so how I originally got into cigars was when I went to Mississippi State University, right? I went there in the late '90s. I was also in Army ROTC, right? My first sergeant he was cavalry, right? He was a table platoon sergeant, and when you're in ROTC, right, you have to choose what your MOS is. Like it's called a military occupational specialty, and they constantly were trying to get you know the cadets to go a certain way. Usually, what they did, they wanted the cadets to go there all the time, right?
Sure, of course.
So we had two sergeants, staff sergeant, and then a sergeant major. My first sergeant, he was cavalry. The other one was artillery, and at the time, everybody in the whole unit, we all went to airborne school. One summer, you go to airborne school. The next summer, you would go to ranger school, and right, you get tabbed, and when you graduate as an airborne. You have airborne ranger tabs. So he was like, I remember him one day saying, like, Lee, why in the hell do you want to go to airborne school and be an infantry and walk everywhere when you can ride in style in an M1 Abrams? I know you're a gun guy. Won't you want a 120 millimeter rod metal cannon to be toting around? Like,
Knew the way to
I
your
said,
heart.
yeah. So I said, Top, which is what you call it, your senior enlisted top. I said, Top, you make a really good point. Maybe I should think about cavalry. So anyway, fast forward, we go to a military ball, and he said it was. I remember telling he got a couple of us cadets. So I was like, look, he said, as a cavalry tradition, what we do is we take a saddlebag, and in one bag you have a bottle of whiskey like Scotch, and the other saddlebag you have a box of cigars. So we all try to scramble to go find some cigars to bring with us and stuff, because at the time I was actually the only one of legal drinking age. Everybody else was under 21, so we couldn't do it. Right, couldn't bring
Mhm.
the whiskey. So when we scrambled, I remember we found some cigars, but they were one kid bought Swisher Sweets. I'll never forget that. And I remember I went to like one of those it's like a tobacco store, so it's mostly just a big giant cigarette warehouse, And I
Right.
remember
Discount
picking up
cigarettes.
these cigars that were like I don't even remember the name of them. Had some kind of random like Spanish name or something. I remember I bought three of those. They were god awful. I never forget that. Anyway, that's what started the bug. So fast forward, I graduate. I moved back to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I'm in New Orleans, and I'm actually I work for a defense contractor. And I just started, and I co-op with them during I was in college, and I go there for an information security class, and I'm on Canal Street, and it's actually during Mardi Gras.
Oh hell.
And yeah, it was hell because it was hard to keep the class in everybody there because at the time you had all these parades going down Canal, so that people would disappear to go watch that. I remember he was like, "Oh, you don't want to go watch the parades?" I'm like, "Dude, I live right here. I don't. We have Mardi Gras all the time. I've been in Mardi Gras parades. I don't give a shit about this." And I remember being pissed off that we got done. And I couldn't go get something to eat because I couldn't cross the parade path. You couldn't go past it. But I remember finally getting out one day really early because I completed the lab, and I'm walking down Bourbon, and I see this older Spanish guy. I think he's Puerto Rican. He actually still does this for Credit City Cigar, but he had a sign that says cigars. I'm like, oh man, that's perfect. I'm gonna go get a cigar. So I walk in, it's Crescent City Cigars that are on Orleans Street. So it's right off of Bourbon. I walk in there, and the owner, Armando Ortiz, is there. And I remember he's helping some customers, and I walk in, and he's dealing with other people, and I'm just looking around like, oh, this is a lot of cool stuff and a lot of good cigars in here. And at the time, I didn't really know cigar, like I didn't know brands, I didn't really know what I was looking for, right? I just remember seeing the Ashton VSG, thinking that's a really cool band. That looks really elegant. So that's probably a really good cigar, right? It wasn't really cheap either. So I bought an Ashton VSG Robusto, and I
I was going to
got
ask you if
that.
you remember the Vitola. Okay.
Yeah, it was a Robusto. I'll never forget it. And I remember we talked for a little while, but I actually left and was smoking because actually at the time it was my girlfriend, which is now my wife. She drove over from Mississippi. We only lived about an hour and 15 minutes outside New Orleans. She drove over for the day because we got out early just to kind of hang out, just kind of chill. And I remember walking around. I lit that and walked around the French Quarter a little bit, spoke of that, thinking, "Holy crap, this cigar was blowing my mind." It was like unbelievable. Because remember, my only idea of cigars were those really shitty bundle crap sticks that I had
And
at
Swisher
Mississippi
Sweets.
State. Yeah,
Yeah.
thinking, "Oh, those aren't that bad." I thought they didn't taste that great, but I thought, well, that's just how cigars are until I had that VSG. And then the world opened up. I remember I went back and I bought a bunch of more stuff. And ever since then, I'm a big loyal customer for Crescent City Cigars. Like even when I move away, I still go back. I go back to New Orleans to go there. I consider them like a home shop. Like that's one of my home shops.
That's awesome.
Still to this day.
I've always wanted to go. I know people who frequent it. I've know people who've been. I've heard of Armando and everything, and they're just great experiences I've heard about that place, and it's something that I definitely want to visit. And I actually unfortunately haven't been. So do you still smoke? Do you still smoke Ashton VSGs? Do you still go back to it?
Oh yeah, 100%.
No, it's still the Robusto, or because I'm a big Wizard guy. I think the Wizard is I'm a big Vitola snob, as my audience knows. I think the Wizard is. I think it's like the Wizard, and then the rest of the Vitolas after that.
Well, to me, my favorite. Okay, so the Robusto was forever until the Pegasus came out. Now the Pegasus is my favorite one. I love that.
I
I
like
mean,
I like the Pegasus too. The Trace Mystique is probably the most underrated with that little one, but it's just really hard to swallow at that price point for
yeah,
such a small cigar.
I agree, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I like. See, there's not. I don't think there's any VSG Vitola that I don't love. But if I got to pick one, like right now, I have a box of Robustos in there that I rarely touch them because I bought a box and I wanted to try to age them for a long time, and right now I think they're 14 or 15 years old now. And I have a box of Robusto extras in there that they had that was a limited edition size they had many years back. I got some of those. I got a bunch of random sizes in a drawer in one of my humidors in there too, just various sizes, mostly Pegasus.
Yeah.
So I do. When I first started smoking, I smoked a lot of VSGs, but I also smoked a whole lot of Excaliburs, Toyota Monterey Excaliburs, and regular punches. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So to me,
Nice classics.
I still enjoy those. I just had a Excalibur not too long ago. Excalibur #1 natural. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
smoked. I still enjoy them. I mean, are they great now that I thought they were back then? No, they're not. Like, I mean, we've got so much great stuff out nowadays. It's
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. But still, to me, it's like a nostalgia thing. When I go back, it brings back fond memories. So every time I have a punch or Excalibur, I have fond memories of that. Even VSGs, same thing. So I mean, when I smoke all the new stuff we have out now, this great limited, all kinds of crap. Because I mean, between us, we got so much great stuff out, limited release stuff, just amazing stuff. I still like going back to those old original cigars every now and then, still too.
That's something I've always noticed about you, Ben. Like when I've heard you on other interviews and other shows and everything, your taste seems to really gravitate towards cigars that, like you like some of the quote unquote fanboy cigars too, but you still have like this love and infatuation for brands that have either been forgotten or have been what the quote unquote classics, like your love for the Hoya de Monterey. the original CAO La Traviata. I know it was
Mm-hmm.
one of your jams.
Yeah, big time.
I mean, talk about a cigar that's been, that's been forgotten about, and has kind of been pushed to the wayside and almost kind of put into the bargain bin everywhere. And it's unfortunate, but that original one, I agree with you. I thought that the original La Traviata was a stellar cigar. And but yeah, that's something I've always really liked about you, is when you kind of wax poetic and talk nostalgically about these cigars that you have enjoyed over your career, that, again, like I said, they've either been forgotten or they're not quote unquote cool cigars to smoke, and that's pretty awesome. So how did you get start in media? We're gonna get into the Stogie Review story here in just a second. Are you one of the founders of Stogie Review? I know there's several guys that
No.
know.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
So I came in probably I think 3 years after they started, right?
So
So
2009. Okay.
yeah, so what I did, what happened was, when I was at Mississippi State, I started going to a online forum called Cigar Weekly. That's where it all started at, really. So I used to post on there a lot, made a lot of great friends I still have to this day. And I actually still write for them now. Matter of fact, I do guest reviews for them every now and then too, which I owe them some stuff, actually, as we talk about it. But I'd go there and I'd post and stuff, and a lot of those guys lived in New Orleans, right? A lot of them were in New Orleans, some were in Atlanta, some were in Tampa. But we used to have this HERF in April every year, and it actually started it was a New Orleans cigar crawl, and I forgot the guy's name that originally put that on. But one year I was actually going to go do it, and he was really, really rude to several of our members. So we kind of broke off and did our own little HERF instead of doing that. And a couple of the guys had gotten together. They had bought like it was a cabin actually on Lake Pontchartrain, and we'd go out there and hang out. It was a real eclectic kind of a place. It was just like the bathroom, right? The bathroom, the door to the bathroom was a car door, with weird, all kinds of, like tail lights that would lit up for the lights and stuff. It was just a weird, cool, kooky place, right? And we gathered there and hang out, and we'd boil crawfish and stuff and eat. And anyway, so we did that over several years, and we did that actually until Hurricane Katrina came and destroyed it at that time. But about that time, I started doing. We had this like a little review area that was on. It's on Cigar Weekly, and I post a lot of stuff in there with several other people. And from that, it was two guys that had started up another site called Nice Tight Ash, and we had known each other from there. And they're like, appropriately, hey, do you mind writing a guest review for us on the site? I'm like, yeah, because I was thought about like I should make up my own blog, because I just enjoy talking about cigars, right? So all I want to do was just basically have my own, almost like a own cigar diary, where I could smoke a cigar, write about it, say what I like about it, what I got out of it, and post it out there just to start conversation up. Really, kind of no different the way I see Stogie Review or anything today. It's the same way I see it now. And I did that for several years until basically life took over, and those two guys left the site of Nice Tight Edge. And at the time, I didn't have admin control over it. I
Right.
couldn't do anything with the site, right? And one of the guys' dad, he was worked IT for the Navy. He would do all the IT stuff for it. He did all the work on it, installing plugins and all kinds of stuff, right? And he would only do it when he could get to it, right? Because he had work. Work was his priority, like it should be, it's for everybody. But it got to the point where I was the only one posting, and I had no control over anything on the site. I couldn't do updates. I couldn't swap the ads out. I couldn't do anything. And I was like, man, this is getting terrible. I can't keep doing this by myself. And during the time, we were going on cigar trips a lot, and I always just kind of hung out with the Stogie Review crew at the time. It was Walt and Jerry and Brian, and we always hit it off. We all had great time with each other. So
Mm-hmm.
they kind of noticed that like I was by myself. They're like, hey, why don't you come join us? And that's how I ended up on Stogie Review. And I kind of went from there, actually.
So since your first review wasn't with Stogie Review, do you actually remember your first review?
Yeah, my guest review for Lifetime Ash was actually the Illusion Cruzado. That was my
Okay.
first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd you score it? How did it score?
We didn't. I don't. I don't think we scored at the time. I don't remember scoring. I just remember saying it was a great cigar, and still another one I go to when I can find them. So love them to this day. But
And see, that's
I
another one
don't
of
remember
like
that.
that's one of Dion's most like underrated lines, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people talk about, our good friend Sean Miles, who's is on here as he always is every week. One of my most loyal audience members. He's smoking a
Hmm.
Singular. A lot of people love Dion stuff, but the Cruzado gets no play. Gets no play.
Yeah,
Humbly.
I remember because I remember after I did that, I saw Dion at the trade show, and he was like, "Man, it's like I'm so glad you did a review of the Cruzado because nobody talks about it." He even this day remembers. I remember your first review was the Cruzado, which I thought was really cool because I would just like post it, kind of like I said, like a ball cigar diary. I didn't really expect anybody to read it, to be honest, but it actually was. It was very well received. A lot of people say, "Oh man, I didn't think about that cigar." I kind of like I go to the cigar shop, I
Hmm.
see this other stuff, and I never picked that up. And people started getting it, like, "Oh, this really is a good cigar." So it's
Interesting.
like, man, this is awesome. I'm glad I could spotlight some stuff that people are just overlooking. So that was the very first review I ever did was Cruzado.
So I won't go into the diatribe again, but you mentioned earlier how you don't get starstruck, and Dion's one of the people that I look forward to the opportunity to hopefully one day actually have the opportunity. I've met him, but I would love the opportunity to interview him. But you mentioned how you don't get starstruck. But do you remember your first interview, like one of cigar fandom or whatever, cigar celebrity, however we characterize these folks? Like, do you remember who that was?
Honestly, I don't. I don't remember who the first one was. But talking about the starstruck, there is one person that I did get starstruck over. I was really nervous when I was able to meet him and do an interview. It was Hiki Kellner, and like you know, people know that I'm a Davidoff fanboy. I love Davidoff,
Mm-hmm.
and this is whenever the Davidoff Nicaragua was coming out. My shop owner Paul Bertucci, he owns the cigar shop in Biloxi. We actually were invited to go to the release party. It was in New York City. It was
Mm-hmm.
at Mulberry Cigars, and they were having like the launch of the Nicaragua. So we flew up there, and we went. We got there at like it was a day early.
All right, I'm gonna put the pause on you real quick, Ben, because I know
Okay.
there's a second half to this story that we're gonna get into
Uh huh.
later. So don't tell the whole story, just tell this part, okay?
Yeah. So anyway, we you're right. I forgot about that part. Okay. So anyway, we got there early that morning, and we immediately got off the plane, dropped our bags off the hotel, that went straight to the Davidoff Madison Avenue store,
Mm-hmm.
and which I got some amazing stories about visiting that place for the first time. Um, about which we could get to later if you want to, but it's just about how cigars socially everybody's equal.
Yeah.
Everybody cigar people are they just love cigar people, right? So anyway, we go there, we go to the Columbus Circle after that for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
and we end up going to De La Concha. At the time, it wasn't affiliated with Davidoff really. Now it's a Davidoff store, but we're sitting there and we're having a cigar. Everybody, the guys like, hey, we bought our cigars, we're about to light them up. He said, hey, y'all should go sit at the tables or on the side where the big windows at. You can and people watch, right? Because it's New York City, it's right by Central Park and stuff. And he said a lot of people like to go sit there and watch all the different types that kind of walk by the window and stuff. I remember that would be kind of cool because I remember walking to that store, going past Central Park, thinking, and I am walking as fast as I can go, like I'm booking, like speed walking, and I feel like I'm about to get run over by these New Yorkers. Like they're like going around me, like I'm not even moving. So I was like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to sit there and watch all this stuff. So we're sitting there smoking, and all of a sudden, here comes Inky Kellner and Jeff Stone from Davidoff. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, what the hell? Where are they going? Oh, they're coming in here. So they come in. I forgot what they came in for, but anyway, they see us sitting at the table, and they walk up, and Mr. Kellner says, "Hey, do you mind if we sit with y'all at the table?" I'm like, "Fuck, you can do whatever you want. I don't give a shit. Please, yes, please sit
Yes,
down."
Mr. Kellner, absolutely. Can I get your chair, sir?
Yeah, pretty much, right? So we're sitting there, and we're kind of just talking. What was funny too is like one of the cigars I don't like from Davidoff is their Maduros. I don't like the Maduro. So um, it's funny too because we're sitting down there, and I'm happy. I'm smoking a Davidoff Grand Cru #2, which is my favorite Davidoff,
Love that cigar.
and I'm about to be done with it, and I'm about to pick up something. I don't even remember what I was about to grab. But he's like, "Hey, here, would you like one of these?" And he opens up one of the little tin Davidoff Primeras Maduros, the little
Yeah,
Primeras
the
in the
Primeros.
tin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I didn't want to tell him like I don't like your Maduro. And I'm like, sure. And like, he hands me one, and I'm smoking. I'm like, damn, actually, this is really good in this little Vitola. I kind of like the Maduro in this one. I think I like it more than a regular one. So we're talking, and I'm like, just go for it, just go for it, just go for it. And at the time, we didn't have the cell phones. They weren't. I had a BlackBerry for work at the time, right? I
Hmm.
couldn't record. I didn't record on that, but I had one of those flip cams back in the day, and I was like, screw it. I said, Mr. Keller, do you mind if I do like a real short interview for the website? And he knew Stoker Review. I'm like, he's like, yo, yeah, that'd be great. I love to do that. So we're sitting there, we're doing an interview, and I asked him some, a few questions, try not to keep it simple because I didn't want him to feel like, okay, now you got to put on, airs, and you got to do all this work and stuff. I know you try to just chill out. Well, it's funny too because I remember I was sitting there talking to him, and he's talking, and I look at the battery on my flip cam, and it's blinking red. It's about to die. I'm like, please, please, just don't die, don't die, please don't die on me. And it gets to the point, like he gets to the end of the story, I'm like, oh, Mr. Keller, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. And as I said that, boom, it dies. Like,
Beautiful.
oh, I got it. It was like perfect moment.
Beautiful.
But that was it. And since then I've actually gone down to Dominican Republic. Went to the Davidoff factory and stuff, and I actually spent like 5 days with him. So he's that whole family are amazing people. They are so
Hmm.
down to earth, genuinely friendly. Klaus Peter and I have made up. We've got a good friendship too. He's a super super guy. The whole bunch. They were the Keller family. They're just amazing. I love them.
They really are fantastic, and that kind of goes into this industry a little bit. I know we're going to dive into some more folks for your story throughout the rest of tonight's show, but what's interesting, my first starstruck experience was I started high. I met the person that I mean was pretty much responsible for me being in the premium cigar industry. He made the cigars that kind of got me into it. I mean, I smoked the Fonseca. That was my first cigar, um,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was kind of bittersweet when I saw that it was being resurrected by my father for me. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to smoke it, but and it's kind of like, it's kind of a little bittersweet for me. But I know that the Garcia family will. I haven't had it yet, but we'll pay proper homage to that brand. But
Yeah. I heard
the
it's amazing.
I've heard it's really good too. So I'm trying not to
Mm-hmm.
overhype it in my head.
Me too. Do the same thing because I haven't had it yet either.
But I met, so my very first premium cigar experience, like really premium cigar experience, was walking to Cigar Lounge for the first time. I walked into the middle of the Flor Dominicana event. People know the story already. I was handed a La Flor Dominicana, single a hero, knocked me on my ass. Loved it ever since. Went back and smoked those, and that was the brand. That was my brand. Still is to this day, to a
Yep.
certain extent. And so I had the opportunity, before I worked at Michael's Tobacco, I had the opportunity to meet Lito Gomez. He came into Michael's for an event, and I started high, man. And yeah, I was a 12-year-old child, no dignity. I mean, like meeting Kirby Puckett, like meeting Frank Thomas. I mean, I was
Yeah.
that level of nervous, and it was ridiculous. And Tracy, my general manager, loves to repeat the story because he just thinks it's comical. And but ever since then, and funnily enough, speaking of Fonseca, the second cigar celebrity I met was Manolo Casada, who I've always said this about him, he has this uncanny ability. He made it sound, when I met Manolo Casada, he made it feel, when I talked and had a conversation, he actually sat down with me and talked to me for like 40 minutes. But he made it feel like he traveled all the way from the Dominican Republic to come meet me. And I was nobody.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
just a consumer at that point. I was nobody, but he made me feel that way. And apparently that's just the way he is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And we'll never forget that. And I think that set the tone for me to have the ability to be a little bit more, cooler when it comes to
Yeah.
meeting some of these people. And I think it opened up that door that you're talking about. These are some of the most down to earth, salt of the earth people. I mean, there are exceptions to every rule, but for the, like, overwhelming majority of it, I mean, they're all like that in same way, form, or fashion. And it's
Hmm.
really one of the probably one of the reasons why you love the industry as much as you do to this day as well. So getting back to Stogie review and your videos and everything, this, my partner in Cigar Coop Primetime Special Edition is credit. I'm not going to take credit for this because he's credited as saying this, and I agree with his position on. He was saying how y'all really pioneered trade show coverage to what it is today. Now, when the trade show does happen, we the collective cigar media, embark to the trade show like many retailers and manufacturers, and we're engrossed for a week of amazing content and amazing personalities, and we pour into every booth and we ask the same questions, different questions, and now there's a lot of video. But before Stogie review, there wasn't coverage. In fact, there was no video coverage. I mean, you guys were the first ones to do this. So I'll ask the stupid question: what got you into doing video? Why video interviews? What motivated you guys to do that?
Well, it just because basically in Sugar Review, what we were doing video reviews, right? So we were doing a lot of video reviews and posting them at the time on a website called Blip TV, which was really convenient because at the time we had a podcast. So we would upload to Blip TV, and we could link it back to the site, kind of like embedding the video that is common nowadays with like YouTube and stuff. But it would also post automatically. The whole post would actually go to our podcast every time we would do a review. So it was just kind of natural that if we went to the trade show, we would just do. I mean, we already set up to do video stuff, so why not just do, all the highlights of the show in video? So that's kind of how it just was easy because we'd already been doing it with reviews, so it was just easy just to go and start doing all the video interviews there at the show too.
So again, you guys were the first ones to do this, and so I mean, it's shocking to think about it now. Is video being cutting edge when everyone seems to be doing video? And in fact, as I mentioned, my partner Coop and I, we do a couple of interviews, but nowhere near the extent that you all do. Half Wheel, Dojo with their live component, Cigar Federation. I mean, these guys are doing video is again now the norm. Coop and I hold back on the video and we do more content driven. We're the unusual cats. We're the weird ones, right? So but what was when you first walked into these booths and presented the idea of doing a video interview, what was the initial response overall, to this new medium of video coverage?
Some people were a little nervous about being on video doing it, and I can see why. I mean, because you don't know how you'll be presented, right? You don't know how you'll come off. So a lot of people were a little nervous. Some people were like really enjoyed it, thought it was a great idea. Like for one, John Huber at the time was CAO, was one of our biggest proponents. He thought it was awesome. He latched onto that. So I mean, we had several people like that back in the day. Jonathan Drew, another one. We just
personality made for camera, man. I mean, that guy's
exactly right.
That guy lights up a room. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you talk about somebody that takes time, no matter how tired he is, no matter what's going on, he will take the time to talk to any fans of Drew Estate. It's unbelievable, I mean, I've been to a couple of events with him. One he did at our home shop where I remember he was talking to so many people. I was running to get him drinks just to, because he was talking to so many people. Like he was literally cornered in a corner of our private area, just talking to everybody. He couldn't even get out of there. So I was kind of like, his, I don't know, his concierge, just bringing him whatever. Like he would like motion to me. I'm like, I got you. Go get it, and because he would sit there and talk to everybody. I mean, he's legitimately one of the great, one of the nicest guys. To us, he was one of the nicest people ever. And a lot of people were like that. They were
Hmm.
really encouraging about it. Thought it was great. I mean, because they probably saw it too as kind of like free advertising a little bit too. But
Sure.
it was a good way to um, get information about your product out immediately and not have to wait for it to be posted, or printed in like Cigar Aficionado a couple months later.
Right.
So their consumer got to see the new stuff within a week or that day even
Right.
sometimes.
Right. Right.
So they saw the benefit of it too for the most part. It was rare that at first there was some people that didn't want to deal with it because they thought it might be a waste of time because like they're trying to. I mean, the trade show is about them making sales, selling to retailers, right?
Right.
And one of our biggest things was we never, ever, ever interrupt a business conversation or meeting, right?
Sure.
If we're going to meet somebody, we try to schedule everything, which never by day half the way through day two is totally shot, it's gone pretty much. But we try to schedule everything. So if we show up and the person we're supposed to meet is with the customer, we just back off and we wait as long as we possibly can. And if not, we will reschedule. So we don't interrupt that. And I think that was you know that was a bonus too, where the people saw that we respected that part of it. Like we're not just budget barging in and hogging time, and we're not there just to grab a bunch of free samples and haul ass or something.
Hmm.
That kind of gave us some more street cred, as you could say, with them. So then after every year was more and more like, hey, when you come to my booth, when can y'all come by? Or it turned out to be a really cool thing.
Yeah, it certainly changed the thing, and like I said, it's now the norm. I mean, you guys really. I mean, it seems like an over dramatized word, but it really isn't. I mean, you guys revolutionized trade show coverage. And when you talk about Stogie Review's place in cigar media and everything, I mean that's something. I mean that's huge. Like you said, getting your product information out faster and quicker, and again to that point, not even just the video component of it, Ben, but I think what you all did as a collective unit really paved the way for making it easier for everybody. It's almost expectation now. When I was for last year at 2019's trade show, Coop, the first year that I went in 2018, he kind of held my hand a little bit and we walked around a lot together. But in 2019, he's like, hey, I want to do more coverage. Can you take more of this on your own so that we can expand our coverage? And I said, yeah. And granted, I had the weight of his name around my neck. I was like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm Bear with Cigar Coop. And, it carried a lot of weight with some folks. But at the same time, it was, overwhelming. I mean, there were a couple of exceptions to this, but overwhelmingly, people were like, oh yeah, it was almost an expectation. Like, oh yeah, let me sit down with you, And in fact, and I'm about to light up a second cigar. The probably the most surprising for me is I went to, and it was their debut. It was the Ace Prime booth, right?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
about to smoke the Pichardo Maduro, the new one. This is the pre-release band. This isn't the apparently this, well, it may be the final release, but I know that this is the sample that they sent to a couple of us media folks. And I met Luciano Meireles for the first time, and I just we've actually built up a really nice friendship. You were talking about friendships in this industry, and we just actually had a great offhanded conversation yesterday. We got together on a Zoom and just kind of talked about a few things, but I walk into Ace Prime and I'm just looking to get information about this new brand, right?
yeah,
Not thinking anything that's going to happen, and I get ushered into this little back room that they had all set up. It was a great thing, and Luciano Mireles, the head of the company, starts chatting with me, and he's like, "Hey, I'll be right back." And then he brings Tiago Splitter and Dominique Wilkins
yeah.
in there with me and I'm like, "Okay, I guess this is happening. talk with basketball Hall of Famer and a basketball all-star and the head of the company, and here I am doing this solo. So thank you, Ben. I owe it all to you guys at Stogie Review for the opportunity to have moments like that. And so it's you. I want to kind of go back to something, the people that are kind of hesitant to be on camera, and I've had a couple even with the show. Like it's not that they don't want to do my show, and it's not that they don't want to sit down with me. It's that they are nervous about the whole interview aspect of it. What have been, I have my own set of advice that I give to people that I'm interviewing. What are some things that you kind of talk to those people about, saying, hey, what are your words of wisdom, your pearls of wisdom?
We just basically tell them to, basically just be yourself. We're not going to try to trip you up. We're not TMZ. We're not going to try to ask you anything controversial to, get clicks or anything like that. We're just fans. We're cigar lovers. We just want to know about the new stuff, and and I said, if you decide to say something, you want to get stop and say, can you cut that out? We're like, no problem. We'll cut that out. It's not so we give them a big safety net too,
a lot of trust build up
right.
there. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, by this point, we've done it so much. People already know what to expect when we come in and do an interview, so we rarely run into that, honestly, nowadays. The only time it becomes an issue is when you go to some of the big, mega companies where they have like a PR person, and they kind of they're kind of hesitant, because I mean, some of those, they're here 1 year, gone the next. So it's always a different person.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit hesitant about it, but most of the time, it's really easy. They kind of know what to expect when we're coming anyway, because we're basically, we're just there. We just want to know about the new product. What's the blend? How much it's going to be? When's the release date? And that's kind of what we need to know.
Yeah, just news, fundamental news gathering, right? Nothing crazy.
Right. So they know that we're not going to try to catch them in something that for sensationalize something. So I mean, they kind of know what to expect. So it's kind of rare that we run into that now. And to be honest, now that people we go see, we've interviewed them dozens of times by now. They kind of just, most of them can kind of know exactly what to say. We don't even have to really ask them questions. They kind of just lead right through it. They know exactly what we're there for.
Right.
So it makes our job real easy too.
Right. So so we highlighted this on the last time you were actually on my show, but Ben, how many trade shows have you attended? It's been 12, right?
I think it's 12. Yeah.
Okay.
Our first one was 2005 RTDA.
It was for the RTDA. So you've been through three. Well, no one's been to a PCA trade show yet, just to be clear. But,
true. Yeah.
But when you do go in 2021, God willing, we're going to have a trade show. We'll get into that subject here in a second. But you will have gone through 3 iterations of this organization's premier event: RTDA, IPCPR, and then PCA, what it's going to become here shortly. So in 12 years, 12 shows, more than 12 years because you missed a couple.
Yeah. And actually, one I actually went to as a retailer. I went with my cigar shop Biloxi when the general manager at the time had to leave, like a couple of days before the trade show, and the owner was like, "Hey, I know this is last minute. This is gonna be it's a big thing to ask, but do you mind coming with me to help basically do the purchasing for the store?" So I went that 1 year and did that while the Stogie Review crew kind of went around did their own thing. So
okay,
there was 1 year I was a retailer, which was eye opening as well. But yeah, mostly, I've been to most of them. There's only a handful that I wasn't able to make for one reason or another.
So what's changed the most over the course of these few years, over a decade? What's changed the most about the show from that very first show to 2019, which was the last show that we attended?
From my viewpoint, honestly, the acceptance of us as media.
Okay.
Because we first started going, there was times where like a lot of people, even the organizers themselves, thought we were just, a burden. Like we're there to interrupt business, and we're going to cause disruption to the trade show and
Has that
all
really
that.
changed?
It's gotten a lot better, believe me.
No.
What we go through now is nothing compared to the first days, the first few years of it. It was real bad. Like actually getting there and then going the first day and being denied entry to the show. You know,
Right.
so it's yeah, it was rough initially, but now we're commonplace and where they people see us as an asset now. So before it wasn't like that.
I don't want to dwell on this too much because I don't want to rake them over the coals over something that it ended up being not being a big deal. But it was actually the second time we met. We met for the first time. You came into Michael's actually, and I do remember that
Yeah,
encounter.
yeah,
But the second time we actually met and actually had a conversation, said that we met at the Alec Bradley press party last year's trade
yeah,
show. We're sitting down, and it was at the end of the party, so we weren't really doing too much. We're just kind of getting the, we'd already done a bunch of work that day. I'd been to a couple of events and stuff, and we were talking about the infamous email that all of us media people got less
yep.
than 36 hours before the kickoff of the trade show that basically told us, all right, media, you can do your thing, but do as much as you possibly can during non-show hours. Make
Yeah,
arrangements during non-show hours, which basically
it's impossible.
impossible. And it basically said it almost felt like you're not welcome. And I remember,
100%.
don't want to put words in your mouth here, Ben, but I remember well, actually, you and Brian were very, and understandably so, because you'd been through this before. You'd been through this entire process of finally getting accepted, as you said, and then it was like almost like not just 2 steps back, it was like 10 steps back. And we were all pretty frustrated, but I mean, you guys were pretty furious with it.
Yeah.
Am I overcharacterizing it? I don't want to.
No, because when I saw that email, I lost my shit. I was so pissed. I was pissed to like, why didn't I expect this to fuck you? I'm gonna do what I want to do anyway. I'm gonna do it. You throw me off the floor. I don't care. To where I happen to know one of the board members really well. It's a good friend of mine, and I actually went to him. I was like, dude, what the fuck? What is this about? He's like, what are you talking about? He had no idea about it. So I brought it up on my phone and showed it to him. He's like, give me a minute. He left for me. It was actually at the Nat Sherman little cocktail party he had after the first night, and I showed that he was furious, you know. And so that got taken care of. It happened to be basically, I guess you could call it a clerical error on their part.
Yeah, that's how it got characterized. It ended up not
Yeah.
being a big deal. Like it was, like I said,
No.
I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's pertinent to this discussion because you guys went through that. I mean, you literally through blood, sweat, and tears fought for our rights to be there and to cover and to bring the coverage to the trade show of what it really is. And so now, our audience members, whoever they are, whether they're audience members of ELOSOFUMAR Takes or readers of Cigar Coop or Half Wheel or Stogie Review or Cigar Dojo or anything, like it didn't matter. We were able to bring comprehensive coverage of the trade show to to a much broader audience, again, because of you guys. You guys really, really did revolutionize this this concept of trade show coverage. And so, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and answer this one for you, Ben. I'm assuming that's what's probably changed for the better too. You said
Yeah.
that's what's changed the most, but that's also been what's changed for the better. What's changed for the worst over the last decade plus? What's been the worst thing about the trade show?
The worst thing. Let's see. That's a good question.
And from any aspect that you can see, from consumer perspective, from media perspective, I mean,
man, I don't know. I'll be honest. Since we started this, so much stuff has gotten better that I was trying to think what would be the worst thing, really. What's gotten worse? Honestly, not a whole lot has gotten worse. Like so much has gotten better that we don't really run. I don't know, maybe because we've been through so much of the early years to where now that some things that some of the newer people consider like this is bad or whatever, It's not. In our viewpoint, that's not a big deal.
Water off a duck's back. Yeah. Okay.
Kinda, yeah, kinda. I don't know, man. There's not a whole lot that's gotten worse that I can see, really. I mean, I don't know, man. I really can't think of nothing off the top of my head, to be honest.
Well, that's positive. That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, there are things that we definitely don't let them off the. We definitely don't let the organization off the map. There's a lot that can be improved. There's a lot that can be better and stuff. But as far as if you've truly witnessed that much positive change over the years, that's good as we kind of reflect and as we expect more of the PCA and of the trade show. That kind of bodes well for the future of the organization. Especially, like I said, we're going to get into it here in a little bit, but especially with in light of this year and things like that, it's that kind of speaks to its positive nature. So that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us into our next fun segment. And this is our one must go. And this is brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabey and Byron lines. So this is a segment that we've had for quite a while now. So I won't say our new segment anymore, but it's something that I like to have fun with, and I like to mold it around my guest as much as possible. Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes I just throw something random in, but it's meant to be fun. And so I was thinking about you, Ben, and I was thinking about what could I pose to you that would be a good point of discussion, agonizing. So the point is you can no longer partake, enjoy, be a fan of. One of these has got to go forever. You
Okay.
can no longer be a part of it. Okay.
These are always fun. Let's go.
Yes. So here we go. So I know you're a big sports fan.
Hmm.
So the Atlanta Braves, the New Orleans Saints, or anything to do with Mississippi State athletics.
Well,
Which one
Mississippi State's family, so they trump every single thing there is.
Okay. So Mississippi State stays.
Oh, this sucks so bad. Okay, I take back where I said it was fun. Man, that sucks.
And I'm going to throw myself in the boat too, because I have basically where I'm going to take my baseball team, my football team, and my college too. So I'm going to participate. So this isn't going to be just agony on your end here. Okay.
Man, that's so tough, man. I mean, because basically got to choose between the Saints and the Braves. My God, man. The one that would that sucks
What
so
could you
bad.
not live without?
Oh man. I this is fun. I would probably say the Saints. And the only reason I
As you wear
say
the
that,
T-shirt, I knew you were going
I
to say it.
know,
I knew it.
I know. The only reason I could that oh man, I wouldn't say comfortable saying that. I would just say that eases it a little bit. Is that I'm also a big Cowboys fan, so at least I have a backup there. Like to me in baseball, it's the Atlanta Braves, right? And I
Okay.
know I live in Dallas now, so we have the Rangers, and I'm so looking forward to going to a Rangers game. I mean, I just love going to baseball games. Period.
I'm
Like
sorry.
when I was a
Did you ever go to the old stadium, man? The old stadium is gorgeous. The ballpark in Arlington is amazing.
no, I
Oh
no,
God, it was gorgeous. This new place, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's cool. It's covered and people can stop bitching about the heat in the middle of summer.
yeah,
You know what? Go fuck yourself. Whatever. But the ballpark in Arlington I said it earlier, was the definition of a cathedral. It was perfect. I loved that stadium.
man, yeah. I mean, I feel the same way about the Superdome too. Like I've been to a lot of Saints games. I've seen Dan Marino play there. I saw Brett Favre. And of course I've saw many. We've gone through several quarterbacks through the years. I mean,
Danny
oh,
Warfel, baby. Keith
it's.
Schuler.
I mean, it's just like I don't know, man. That's tough. That's so tough. But I have like a boyhood love of the Braves, and I have a boyhood love of the of Saints too. I'm trying to think of this first Saints game I went to was I think it was Dan Marino,
Hmm.
the Dolphins, because my cousin hit one of his best friends had season tickets. I remember they couldn't go to that game, so they gave them to him. He's like, "Hey, do you want to go watch the Saints?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." Yes, of course I want to go watch the Saints.
Yeah.
You know, but it's we've had a lot of agonizing years in New Orleans with the Saints. And till 2009, which was the greatest year of football ever had in my eyes. So, but I remember, the Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmett Smith days too. So, I mean, I love the Cowboys. So that one doesn't hurt as bad. It still fucking sucks. But yeah, I guess Saints. That sucks.
Well,
But
don't worry,
yeah,
man. This is just for fun. You're not actually doing it, so don't worry about it.
yeah,
Don't beat yourself up too much. So I told you I was going to participate. Okay, so my baseball team is the Red Sox. Okay, my football team is the Packers, and my alma mater is TCU, so the Horned
right.
Frogs. So go Frogs. Beating up on the UT Longhorns this weekend. So yeah, go Frogs indeed. Um, so I mean, this is a really hard decision for me too, man. I mean, I bleed purple, and I bleed green and gold, and I bleed Red Sox, man. And baseball is just as much of a part of me as you. So there's no way there's no way the Red Sox is getting the kick to the curb. No, well, no way in hell. I can't do it. So it really came down to the Packers and TCU for me, and I gotta be honest. It, it as much as I was kind of sitting there and kind of agonizing over it, and then I kind of just had this moment of clarity. It's like, well, like let's just look at this from a longevity standpoint. What have I been part of the longest? And I've been part of you know Packers fandom since I was a child, and I'm an owner now. I'm an NFL owner. I own stock in the Packers, so
Yeah. Which is really cool about that team.
yeah. And I mean, it's awesome. So I have to kick my alma mater to the curb, and that just probably just has all my friends just cringing and just wanting to kill me right now. Like, one in particular, actually a few in particular, I could see basically strangling me over it. But I mean, the truth be told, I mean, I can, I could live without it, because if I had to live without it, I could still live with it, because I would still hear about it from them constantly. So I
Yeah.
really wouldn't, I really wouldn't miss a second of coverage or anything, because they would basically be seeing it on their Facebook feeds and everything. So, but you know, I think it'd be a pretty easy decision for me to kick my alma mater to the curb a little bit. I mean, um, but make no mistake, I mean, I bleed purple, and Gary Patterson is one hell of a coach, and I hope there's been times people have there've always the rumor mill is always churning. I think Mississippi State was in the running at one point to snag him from us, and
Yeah. Sure
and
was.
Arkansas, a couple of great schools, man, to go to the SEC and coach football. I mean, that's a coach's dream, right? And he stayed here in Fort Worth, and my dream is that he retires and he never picks up a clipboard again, and it's his days will always be you know, here in Fort Worth. So I that's my hope for him. And yeah, I would have to kick TCU to the curb a little bit. So um,
Yeah. I can't. That's the one that Mississippi State for me is like I said, I see them like family now. Like, anybody that's ever went there to me is a brother or sister, right? Like my greatest moments of my life are a lot of them are from my years at Mississippi State, And
oh,
then
and
like
mine too. Yeah,
yes, and when I
college.
and when I went to Mississippi State, right, we had Jackie Sherrill as our football coach. We won a lot of games that year. I mean, we went to the SEC championship game, lost in the last 4 minutes to T. Martin, Tennessee,
Oh,
and nobody gave us a chance that year. That was 1998. Nobody gave us a chance to even be in that game. Like people were thinking, oh, it's gonna be like 52-0. And I actually don't remember the final score. I remember being there. I went to it, and it was just a sea of orange and a strip of maroon. That's all there was there, because at the time, basically, it was always Florida or Alabama that was playing, right? So when that game went in, literally those fans would buy tickets for next year's game and book their hotel rooms the next day. That's how often those two teams went. There was a, you know, it's just the way it was. And I remember we were winning until the end of the fourth quarter, and that was a year. That's the same year that Tennessee went on to win the national championship. The year after Peyton Manning left. So I remember going. We Mississippi State has a really famous baseball stadium. It's Dudy Noble Field, the Polk Dement Stadium, and we have an area called Left Field Lounge that's been written about. ESPN has done
Oh yeah.
episodes about it, and
Oh yeah.
it's matter of fact, John Grisham, the famous author, he actually has a skybox there with Jimmy Buffett, if I'm right. They got one in our new stadium, but he actually wrote an article for Sports Illustrated. You can actually Google it and find it. Where I mean, it's an amazing. Of course, he's a amazing writer. He wrote
Hmm.
a great article about Left Field Lounge. But we would have this thing called Super Bulldog Weekend. It was like homecoming during the spring for baseball. We'd have our spring game too. Well, a lot of the people from the Gulf Coast, they would, we would all get together and we'd have a crawfish boil. And it was so funny because we would actually take leftover crawfish, go to the baseball field, and in the outfield there's no stands, right? So we would sit there on the grass and eat crawfish. And it was so
Hmm.
funny because the players would come up, the outfielders would come up in between innings, and we would give them crawfish. They would be eating crawfish with us in the middle of the game.
That's
So I have
awesome.
these memories, and and I wasn't a partier at all. I was an engineering student. You either party or you graduated, especially in engineering school. So I mean, there was actually times where I wouldn't go to a football game because I had to go to finish a lab, or something. But
Oh, God
we
bless you,
we
Ben.
had we had yeah, no kidding. We had some amazing. I remember my first football game ever, college football period, was Mississippi State 1996. Um, we had scored a touchdown and we're beating Alabama 17-16. There's like 20 seconds left in the game. I can't remember the quarterback. It was Jay Barker for Alabama. I can't remember. I just remember being in the stands and I'm watching it thinking, oh my God, we might pull this off. Alabama was going when they were going to go play the national championship. They were number two. They weren't number one, but they were like number two in the nation, and they were supposed to just destroy us because we weren't the year before. We didn't have a winning record. But I remember watching him drop back, and he goes and he throws. They're like on the 40-yard line, and he throws this bomb. And I look like, where's he throwing it to? I see a wide receiver racing down the sideline. I don't see nobody near him. Nobody. Out of nowhere, he's about to catch a ball, and one of our defensive backs comes over, slaps the ball down. Game over. We beat the big juggernaut of Alabama.
Oh
We
wow.
all rush the field. We tear down the goalpost. Actually, this is so stupid, but I actually got my pocket knife out. You could actually bring a knife to the end at the time. And I actually cut a piece of the turf out. And my friend actually, she put it in a jar and decorated the jar. And I have it in my office still, a piece of the turf
Oh,
from that
that's
game.
awesome.
Here's the nerdy part of that. So we took one of the goalposts, and I don't remember how this actually happened, but we got pieces of the goalpost out of the stadium and got it to a frat house. And I don't remember which one it was, but one of the fraternity members, several of them there were actually engineering students. We actually cut the goalpost up, nerds, and turned them into beer koozies. We took the goalpost out and filled the inside of it with this foam to make a beer koozie out of them.
Oh my
You
gosh.
could. They were kind of unusable because they were so big and heavy. But yeah, we're nerds, so we made. That's what we did. So I just had those memories, and we beat Florida 47-35 one time, and it was Steve Spurrier, the fun and gun offense, and I remember it wasn't even that close, but Jabbar Gaffney, and I can't remember who their quarterback was at the time. I can't remember. Was it Danny Moore? I can't remember. But anyway, I remember at one point we had them for a third and 47 because we sacked him so bad that whole game. It was unbelievable. But Jabbar Gaffney caught two garbage touchdowns. We had a third string defense, and it was like so bad. It was 47-21 going in the fourth quarter. And I just remember that place was rocking. We were jumping up. We had these aluminum stands at the time at the end zone, which now is a giant jumbotron. We were beating on that thing. The whole thing was vibrating. I mean, it was loud in there. It was, I mean, we have cowbells, right? We're ringing cowbells. It was unbelievable. That was an unbelievable time. We were supposed to get crushed that game too, but it was unbelievable that game. I mean, I just have those memories and stuff. Like at the time too, our basketball team was amazing, but I never got to see any basketball game because, like I said, I was at Army ROTC. Well, I was on color guard for those games, so we would go there, present the flag for the national anthem,
Hmm.
and then we would secure the flags and march them back to the RTC building and secure them up. By the time I got done with that, it's in the second half of the basketball game. So I was like, well, I'm not even gonna bother going back. So I never saw a basketball game there. Crazy as that was. And that's, 1996, we went to the Final Four. So we were a
Hmm.
great basketball team at the time too. So I don't know. I just had those memories. I had one of my cadets was actually on the SSC West championship team. I was on the sidelines a lot, hanging out with them. And remember, he actually gave me. You actually get a ring in the SEC for winning the West, the East, and the West. So I remember he like gave me his ring to put on, and I remember because I grew up a huge Notre Dame fan. Because I'm Irish Catholic. I went to Catholic school, and my dream was always go to Notre Dame. Right? I just couldn't afford at the time. It was $28,000 a year, so I didn't. I couldn't afford that, so I didn't. I ended up going
God,
there.
the mid 90s for 28,000. I mean, shoot, that's a
Yeah, it was a lot of money, a lot
gosh.
of money, and so anyway, um, so Lou Holtz was an idol of mine. My it was one of my mom's cousins actually was Lou Holtz's secretary. So like he during the '88 season when they won the national championship, he actually had her send me a bunch of Notre Dame gear, and I mean one of them was one of his personal hats that he wore on the sideline.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's cool.
I wore that every day until I was a senior in high school. And I was an idiot. I was wearing it in school, and my principal at the time, she was a nun. You can't wear hats, right? So she's like, saw me, she's like, give me that hat. You can't wear that. You can get that back later. She lost the hat. Lost my hat. Yeah,
Oh,
she felt so bad. I mean, so bad. She went out. Nuns don't make any money, right? She actually went out and bought one of those. It was one of the wool hats, the real nice ones.
yeah.
She felt, and I was like, I mean, that's. I know you didn't do it on purpose. It's okay, but yeah, and it's a joke with my
Oh,
with my mom and some of my family because what he did is he sent me a Notre Dame sweatshirt and a Notre Dame like it's like sweatpants material, but they were shorts. And they developed holes in them to where they were like massive holes, but I would never get rid of them. I wore those with these massive holes in there, like they were like somebody shot 'em with a shotgun. It was just they were ratty things. I wore them forever. So even to that day, we played Notre Dame in baseball at a super regional, and my friends were asking me like, "Who are you going to root for, Mississippi State or Notre Dame?" That's how much I was a Notre Dame fan when I growing up. I'm like, "Oh, Mississippi State, that's family. I love Notre Dame, but that's family. I'll always be Mississippi State." So I'm on the sideline whenever Lou Holtz would go coach. He went to go coach South Carolina, and we're playing them, and I'm trying to actually get close to Lou Holtz and just to talk to him. And that's why my friend was on the sideline with me. He gave me that ring. And I remember putting the SC West ring on, and I remember my hand was like that. I could not close my fingers wouldn't even get close because the ring was so big. I
jeez.
remember thinking, "Holy shit, this is just the SSC West ring. I don't even want to know what the SC Championship ring is like or the
Right.
National Championship ring." But I don't know. I just got all those memories. So that would be never be one I could ever. I mean, the Braves would go before for them. You know.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's well. Thanks for participating in One Must Go, and that I posed the question to our audience tonight. So your college team, your football team, your baseball team, one must go. I want to hear some answers from our audience tonight. So go ahead and throw those in the chat. But as always, that one must go is sponsored by United Cigar. Smoke one today and start living united. As always, it is sponsored by United Cigar, the featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, and the highly acclaimed Atabay and Byron lines. So again, thank you for dealing with that agony, Ben. Really appreciate it. So getting back into your speaking of agony, let's getting back into your story here, we were kind of joking around a little bit before the show, but it's kind of true, man. You've unfortunately you've kind of developed this kind of kiss of death with cigar brands.
Yeah, no shit.
As I gave you much credit for, you have this fondness for for brands that people have either forgotten about or kind of fallen by the wayside, and or classics that aren't quote unquote cool. But one of the more latest brands that you kind of developed an infatuation with, and mind you, I agree with you because I thought they were stellar. But man, one of the best, probably one of the most underrated tragedies in the last couple of years in the cigar industry is Balmoral. You know, you
Yeah.
know, so Balmoral no longer distributed, sells to STG. No longer distributed in the United States, so now you can't even get them here. But man, I remember when the news came down that the company was sold, and I remember you were on a show and you said, "Please, dear God, just don't change the blends, don't change." And they made it even worse and said,
We're killing everything.
we're taking away. I mean, when you've been around for a long time, and this isn't the first time a brand that you probably have liked has kind of has died off for one reason or another. But I mean, with this being so fresh and so recent, I mean, what was that like?
It was
When you heard the
terrible.
news?
It was terrible, man. And when they bought them, I kind of knew something like that would happen, right? Because let's be honest, they don't have a really good track record of buying a company and leaving well enough alone, right? So, I mean, they CEO is a shell of what it used to be, right? Tarano is dead. That was
Yeah.
one of my favorite brands ever. It's what that was a bunch of cigars like the 1960 Cameroon, the Gold. All of those were I love those cigars a lot. I smoked a ton of
The
them.
Exodus for Tarano. Oh God,
Yeah,
the copper. Oh,
yeah.
that cigar is so good. The Virtuoso. I was a big fan of the Tarano Virtuoso. Like yeah, yeah.
Well,
Now that Tarano is probably one of the biggest ones for me. It just still stings.
yeah. I mean, those were such great cigars, And so when I heard they bought them, I was like, oh man, they're gonna fuck this up, aren't they? I don't remember as soon as I did it. I texted my buddy Justin Andrews. I said, "Look, dude, please let me know. Are they going to fuck this up? Are they going to change it?" Well, no, nothing's changing. Nothing's changing. We're going to keep everything the same. I'm like, look, I've heard that line enough from y'all that I don't believe you. You know?
And you were right.
Yeah, and it happened. And I've talked to several people there about that, and I mean, I could. Their reasoning about it was basically a lawyer call, and it's not invalid. Like it basically was the FDA is what really did this. It wasn't they didn't want to do that, right? It was an FDA thing. But I think is if you do that, why even bother? I mean, they bought it for the machine made stuff, right? That was the whole point of it. The premium cigar stuff was just like it's added on, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the Altria Nat Sherman
I was
issue,
gonna say, just
right?
like the next subject we're gonna get into. Yeah.
Yeah. So Altria basically bought it for the cigarettes for Nat Sherman.
Right.
And they don't care about the premium cigar stuff. But like, you know, I still at least with them, there's a glimmer of hope that could come back. Because I was been told that if they could somehow maneuver and figure out the FDA what they're going to do and plan for it, they could bring them back.
They could bring
That
back
could
Balmoral. Yeah, they
that could
could.
happen. So I'm kind of holding on that small thread of hope, but I don't know. It's possible, but man, right now I've stockpiled as much Balmoral as I possibly can, and I smoke them when I really need something special that I feel like. So I'm kind of hanging on to those right now.
This coming from a Davidoff fan, so not Davidoff, not Padron. When you want to do something special, you pull out a Balmoral.
Yeah, because at least with the Davidoff and the Padrones and Opus X stuff that I got, which I have plenty of all three of those, I know I can replace them, right? I know I could go out and get more of those. I can't. Balmoral's gone. It's forever.
Right.
So that's a no go.
So you mentioned it, the second one a second ago, because I remember, after Altria's acquisition of Nat Sherman, there was a lot of doubt, like kind of what we were just talking about with Tarano and CAO, and with that track record of STG and Altria, we were all kind of waiting on pins and needles for the other shoe to drop. some bad stuff kind of came down. So, it just seemed like, Michael Herklotz was a professional boxer, bobbing and weaving, ducking all these, these things that kept going his way. And it seemed like in the last couple of years, they were back on the come. And you were one of the earliest kind of folks on record as being like, yeah, man, they're making some great stuff. The 2019 TAA, the Pan Americana, which I just finished up and everything. I know you've got one on deck there. So when news of just a couple of, about a month or so ago came down that Altria's, no longer, Nat Sherman is no longer, the premium cigar end of Nat Sherman is gone. It's dead. They're no longer going to do it. Means the townhome goes. Herklotz is out. I mean, what went through your head as far as that's concerned?
That one took a minute because I was in total disbelief about that, because Altria, I have to give them credit. They did everything they possibly could to try to sell them to somebody that would keep that going. They did everything they could. They didn't just kill them.
They could have done this last year. Okay. They could have done this a year ago, right?
Yeah. Yes. And they treated the Nat Sherman employees, from what I hear, very, very, very well. They've gone above and beyond the call. So it's a different circumstance with it, but it still hurt. Cause I mean, from the stuff I was hearing inside, I thought they had a buyer that was going to bring them out of the ashes and keep them. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
So that was terrible. That was to me, I'm a big history buff. I love history. And a part of it was that 90-year-old townhouse disappearing.
Yeah.
Was really bad too. That was the worst part.
The videos that Michael's been posting and everything, and the one that I can't even remember the gentleman's name, and that's a shame, but a few days ago, he'd been with the company for 30 years. For 30 years, he had been greeting customers that walked into the townhouse.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And he said that he walked out for the final time. They did this huge recording, and Michael's giving him this huge hug and this thanks, and fuck, man, I lost it. I mean, I cried. It's so brutal. It's just, I'm a big history buff too. And that's, almost a century of history in this industry.
Just
gone forever. And I mean, that's stuff you're not going to be able to get back. That's memories of that place, that historic place that you're never going to be able to get back. And I never had the opportunity to go. And you never had the opportunity to go, which
I had the opportunity, but I fucked it up.
Well, so that leads to you talked about this story earlier on when while you were interviewing Henke Kellner, you made the call. And at the time, probably, with, hindsight being 2020, what it is, but, at the time, I mean, and still, probably a good call. Sit down with the great Henke Kellner, have a couple cigars and shoot an interview with the last pulse of your battery on your camera and everything. Definitely worthwhile. But you guys were going to actually go, right? That was the story.
So when he walked in, we were actually about to get up and leave and go to the townhouse, right? I had called Michael Herklotz. I said, "Look, we're in town. We want to come by and visit the townhouse." And he said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm not there. I'm actually leaving." And I forgot where he said he was. I think he was going to either the Dominican Republic or Nicaragua. He was going one of the two. They said, "But don't worry. I told the guys that y'all are coming. They'll roll out the red carpet for you and they'll take real good care of it." I said, "Awesome, man. I really appreciate it." Well, then Henke Kellner comes in and we sit there and talk with him for a while and did the interview. We ran out of time because as soon as that was over, at the time we were going to the townhouse, we were supposed to go to the Dowd-Off event later that night at Mulberry Cigars. So we ran out of time. So I was like, it's okay. He's not there. We'll go another day. We'll come back and go another day. It never happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I was literally right there, and I didn't get to go, and now I'll never be able to go.
So since you are such a history buff here, Ben, just and is there and we kind of half jokingly talked about Balmoral, who has an extensive history of its own, now going by the wayside as well. Is there do you have like is this you've been around a long time, as we've talked about, is there a I hate to put this pressure on you, especially with the KOD that you've got. Is there something in the back of your mind that you're just like, God, if this went to like, is this next? Like, is there something in the back of your head that, another favorite of yours could go at some
Mhm.
point?
I mean, yeah, to be honest, I worry about some of the smaller boutique brands that we've all grown to love, and we've become really good friends with the people that work there, because all this FDA stuff, it's going to hit them the worst, you know.
Right.
And I'm scared that they're not going to, I know a few that aren't really prepared. They weren't preparing for any of this stuff anyway, thinking that, oh, Rudy Giuliani will save us or Trump will save us. We don't have to worry about none of this stuff. It'll be okay. It'll go away. I'm like, it's not going to go away. Don't
Yeah.
think like that. So I worry about those smaller companies that don't have the financial backing that some of the other ones have, and they got like a whole law firm on retainer to take care of this kind of stuff. I worry about the smaller ones, more the kind of the mom and pop. Well, most of this whole industry is family driven, but some of these smaller ones, that might not can afford to deal with the FDA. That's my biggest fear. Some of the smaller companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's my fear too, because I mean, the Nat Sherman story kind of brings to light that, I mean, that's a historic brand that got bought by a huge parent company, and eventually what happened to it. I mean, that's kind of my fear with some of these other, even not even our boutiques that we've grown to love, but some of these larger companies that are historic as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to start naming names because it would be just pure speculation, but because I have no inside knowledge of anything. But I mean, just think about some of your favorites, right? We were talking about Ashton earlier. What if Ashton got bought? What if
Yeah.
VSGs went away forever? What if we were talking about my father? What if my father's went away? No more Le Bijou, no more Fonseca. What would happen to the companies that they support and have helped build? Crowned Heads, Tatuaje. They make stuff for Ashton too, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of my father, so I mean, that Nat Sherman, to me, the story of Nat Sherman actually brings a lot more fear into my purview than had existed even before. Like, I mean, I
Hmm.
heard about it, I thought about it, especially when the acquisition occurred and everything. I was like, but when they started to try and keep it going, I was like, okay, maybe they understand, they get it. It's Nat Sherman, you know. Look what Herklotz rose that out of the ashes. They'll continue
Yeah.
it, and they'll they see the value in almost a century of excellence. They get it, right? And at the end of the day, they've got to be, they're beholden to their stockholders. They're beholden to their board of trustees, and and they got to turn them. The mighty dollar speaks again. You know, and that's
Yeah.
the thing that's kind of frightening to me, is like, what if, I mean, because Joel Sherman, the Sherman family had just as much in this industry, had just as much of a stake in this industry as some of the most cherished and time-honored families that we celebrate today. You
Yeah.
know,
In my view,
Kellner and
yeah.
Fuente and Garcia, and Sherman was in there. They were part
Hmm.
of that conversation. So to me, that scares me. That's what's scaring. Again, I'm not trying to name names and just freak people out. I'm not. Nothing's. I have no inside knowledge. Like I said, there's nothing like that that's going. And I think you'd have to. You'd have to. Speaking of Fuente, you'd probably have to pry. The company away from the cold dead fingers of Carlito and Cynthia and
Yeah.
Liana and all those amazing people in the Fuente family before anything happened to that brand. But but yeah, that's the level of fear that I have, is that we're in danger of, there's a this is a perfect example and living proof that history can be erased.
Yeah. I mean, part of me too, when I heard that, was after going through like the gut punch, was like, holy hell, if this can happen to Nat Sherman, it can happen to anybody.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. And
Yeah.
that's a scary thing. But we digress. Let's kind of curve it back a little bit. Some more fun stuff. So you've written a lot of reviews over the years.
Hmm.
Stogie Review, Cigar Weekly, and Nice Tie Dash and everything. Um, and pretty much every organization you've either have had no ratings or have been on the 100-point scale, right? I am correct in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. We just recently, like last year, started doing um, basically the point system because one of the things when I moved, I left Nice Tight Ash and I went to Sticker Review was I kind of liked that they didn't do a score, right? Because all these cigars, we're basically scoring on what we like and don't like about a cigar, our own personal taste, or what we like about it, from just our standpoint of our own palate. So it's kind of not fair to me to rate something that, I mean, you can love it, and I might not like it, and vice versa. So I kind of like to say, this is what I got out of it. This is why I liked it, And so, kind of if you like the same type of stuff that I do, then you'll probably enjoy this. You should go check it out, right? Like I've said it on Coop's show several times. Like, what I see it is kind of like getting, kind of like restaurants, right? Like you want to give people, it's like come to your town. You're like, hey, what's a good place to eat, right? You want to tell them about the good places, right? You'll say, oh man, this place over here, they have shit service. Their food is mediocre at best. It's not very good. Go check that out. No, you tell them the stuff that you like, what you
Right.
enjoy, and why you like it. That's the way I do cigar reviews, right? So even before we start to the points, a lot of the stuff that I talk about is stuff that I personally like because I want to let people know because we have tons of cigars we can review, like tons. I'll never get to half of these that I want to review because it's just not enough time. So I want to focus on the stuff that I really like to let you know the reader know or the viewer know, man, this is something I think you should check out. This is noteworthy. I think you would like it too, and this is why I like it and stuff. And that was the main focus of the reviews. Like I said, it's almost like it's a conversation. Like you're sitting at a cigar shop, be like, "Hey, what are you smoking? Oh, I'm smoking this. Oh, is it good? Yeah, I like it because blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
Just like having a conversation. That's the way I approach my reviews. It's like a
Okay.
conversation at a cigar shop, right? So to me, the score was never really an important part of that, right? But so many people put pressure on us over the years to start doing the scoring system because I mean, you have people that just go, okay, there's like okay, I'm smoking the new right now. I moved on to the La Aurora 107 Nicaragua, right? It's brand new. So I want to talk about. They'll say, oh, okay, what's that like? They want to read about it, but they kind of just want to give a brief synopsis and go straight to the score. Oh, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Then they'll form their own opinion of just the score and not read nothing about it or watch the video or nothing like that. We have a lot of manufacturers that like to put our scores in their print ads or something. So they'll say, "Oh, Cigar Coop gave it this, and Halfwell did this, and whatever." So, a lot of them was putting pressure like, "Hey, are you gonna start doing scores? When can you do scores? We want to put you in our magazine ad, but we need a score. Basically, we need a little image saying Stugger Review gave it this. That's what they
Yeah.
wanted. And it got to the point where it's like everybody was saying, like everybody wanted it. I'm like, fuck it, let's just do it. It's not that big of a deal, even though it wasn't truly what I wanted to do. But it's kind of how it ended up becoming that way.
So, so to that point here, Ben. So this is actually a subject that's come up, and it's come up quite a bit over time, but it came up this last couple of weeks with a couple of different stories that came out with different companies and stuff, and not necessarily around reviews, but just around the way that cigar industry is covered by the media, and in some cases, some people have took a certain position, a certain affront that their integrity on both sides of the board, from the manufacturing standpoint and from the cigar media standpoint, have both been called into question. So I'll just ask the question straight out, Ben. Do you think that this push, this aggression, this, for lack of a better word, bullying that you went into going a direction that you necessarily weren't comfortable with, do you feel like that compromised the integrity of Stogie Review, or you personally, if you don't want to speak for the group?
Not really. I mean, because I could have easily scored any of the stuff. I mean, because basically the score is just off of my personal preferences and likes and dislikes. That score means nothing, honestly, to anybody but just me, right? Because I mean, there's several cigars that I like that Brian hates, and Brian likes that I hate. So we're not going to score it differently,
Right.
and it's not, and it's all off mostly the flavor, right? Because like back in the late '90s, early 2000s, during the original boom, there was a lot of shit cigars, like genuinely trash coming out. Nowadays, I kind of consider this the golden age of cigars. It's very, very rare that you find something that is just very poorly constructed, garbage
Like the quote
tobacco.
unquote dog rocket, right?
Right. It's super rare to find a dog rocket now. Now, will you find something that's not up to what you like on a flavor profile? Oh yeah, of course. Of course.
Right.
Like I don't prefer overly spicy cigars. That doesn't mean it's a bad cigar. They just mean it's not my personal preference.
Right.
So that's why the scoring is, to me, is not, it's not meaningless, but it's the least important factor if in any of my reviews that I do. It's just a personal
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. When I write reviews, I kind of take the same approach because I think that, I completely agree. Even the worst cigar, and we're going to get into this second, the worst cigar that I've ever done a review for, and the lowest rated cigar that I ever did, like it definitely, for all intents and purposes, it just didn't hit my palate. It
Mhm.
performed decently. It didn't taste awful, but it just didn't hit my palate. And so I think there's a lot to that, but I think there's also, a lot of people kind of get on, Aaron Loomis and the developing palates guys, because one, their scoring system is, weird, which I love because, again, I've always said this, I've beaten this dead horse several times. I love it because it generates conversation. They've accomplished
Mhm.
exactly what they wanted to, and they have great conversation around their crazy scoring system, but they're also incredibly tough. They're
Mhm.
on reviews, and Half Wheel has that kind of reputation too, and scoring has kind of gone down, you know, over the years. And Aaron's wrote extensively about it. The average has kind of dropped off, and the whole 90 is not a 90 kind of thing. And concept that he's an approach that he's taken to his research on the subject. So it's interesting. Because, like, the beholden score of 90, that's the cherished score by all manufacturers. And I kind of take exception to that because I've given good cigars that I smoke on the regular 88 and 89. I'll smoke those all day long. I think it's a good cigar.
Mhm.
Um, you know, but it was just how it's scored based on the categories that I have at Cigar Dojo, and that's just how it got tabulated, was 88 or 9. I enjoy the cigar. I'll return to it. I'll smoke it again. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't hold that cherished 9-0 that the companies have beholden and everything. So it's interesting that, to me, that on both sides of the plate there, that integrity's kind of been called into question in some cases, and on both sides of it, because I think it's interesting, because obviously the manufacturer thinks they've put out a superb product, which, to the point we were just making, we're not necessarily disagreeing with,
Right.
right? Subjectively speaking, for you, it didn't hit your palate, and that's all you're really trying to say. And the lowest rated score that I gave on a cigar didn't, and I'll stop beating around the bush. It was a CAO Sessions.
Oh, that's a terrible cigar.
Was the lowest cigar that I've rated. And again, my sample size is much smaller, comparatively speaking, than yours or Charlie
Yeah.
Minato or Coop, who by himself churns out enormous amount of reviews. Is not part, does not have a collective team for Cigar Coop or on the review side. Um, and so my sample size is a lot smaller, but you know, again, to that point of, cigar shop conversation, would I recommend the CA Sessions? Not me personally. No.
I
Does
wouldn't
this hit
either.
my palate?
Mhm.
But I bet I can think of a couple customers that would enjoy it.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Does that make me a hypocrite, or does that devalue, or does that put into question my integrity? If I say it's a crappy cigar, if I rated it this low, how could I possibly recommend it to someone? Well, I could possibly recommend it because I'm also good at my job as a tobacconist, knowing that yes, it didn't hit my palate, but I know someone that might really enjoy it because it could speak to theirs.
Exactly
So,
right.
so, so what do you? I mean, do you happen to remember what the highest and lowest cigars you've rated? Do you have them offhand?
I think the highest cigar I've ever, but I didn't rate it, but the one that I've waxed poetically about the most is before our scoring system was the Davidoff Royal Salomon, the original releases.
Yeah.
I remember that one. I had was
That
I
was
don't
mentioned tonight in
review.
our chat. That was mentioned by someone else in our chat tonight.
Was it really? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that cigar is phenomenal. The original release of it, especially, um, because we got a box of those. My shop owner in Biloxi, the cigar shop in Biloxi. We were actually at that Madison Avenue store. He bought a couple boxes of them. I remember we got back. It was a couple weeks later. It was like, hey, this, at the time they weren't open on Sundays, right? Just the private lounge side was open, the members only side. It's like, hey, why don't you come over Sunday and let's just chit chat and whatever, and we'll try one of these cigars out. I'm like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. Let's do that. And I never review off of one cigar. I mean, over the years, I've learned you can't go off of a sample size of one. I mean, even like I said, I went to engineering school. To judge something off of a sample set of one data point is dumb of all magnitude, right? So I try to smoke a minimum of 3 or 4 before I even will do a review. You know, unless I specifically given one cigar by the manufacturer saying, "Here, this is your sample. I want you to do a review of it." Then I'm stuck. I keep my word. I'm gonna review that one sample and see if it's gonna be bad or good. Whatever it's gonna be is what it is, right?
Right.
But I remember sitting there and we lit that cigar up, and I just happened to have my equipment with me there to do a review because I was going to do one later. I was going to stay back and review something else. And I remember I took a couple of puffs. I was like, "Oh my god, this cigar is unbelievable." And I remember thinking that cigar was $120. I'm not going to probably buy one of these on my own because he gifted it to me. I was thinking, this is my only opportunity. I want to just stop right now, set my stuff up, and I'm going to do a review right now of this cigar. And that's the only time I've ever really done that. And that cigar was so amazing. It was so smooth, elegant, very nuanced. It was just a stunningly good cigar. That would have, if I was doing scores then, that would be the closest to being like a 99 cigar
Hmm.
of anything I've ever smoked, but no doubt in my mind. But that one would be the highest one I've ever reviewed. The best cigar I've ever reviewed was definitely
What,
that cigar.
what about the lowest? You got something in mind?
CEO session would probably be one. that one was that one was just to me bad all the way around. I did not like that at all. It was almost like they mailed that one in to me, like just like, yeah, throw something out here, you go, take it. Um, the worst one I've ever had that I was doing a review on it. I didn't even get to the through the first third, and I pitched it. It was so bad, and it was a cigar that a lot of people really love. This was back in the nice tight ash days. Was a Puros Indios Maximus.
Oh,
And it
really?
was, yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people
it,
love that cigar.
I hated it with a passion.
Oh, wow.
And I spoke through several of them. And I remember I was leaving my work and I was driving back home and I lit one up on the way home thinking, I'm going to smoke this. And when I get home, I'm going to get the other one. I'm going to smoke it and I'm going to do the review on that one. And this is like about the third one I've had. And they were all, to me, off putting. But it was the flavor profile to me was very, very off putting. This is going to sound terrible, but it had a vomit flavor to me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I remember
Wow.
thinking, oh my God, this is like the aftertaste of whenever like after you're sick and you've thrown up, that taste that's in your mouth after you thrown up, that
Oh my
acidic
god.
vileness. I
Oh,
was like, that's what I got. I mean, I can't do this.
oh
I remember
shit.
I'm driving down I-10 and I just pitched the whole damn thing out the window. I'm like, I'm not dealing with that. That was
Oh my god,
god awful.
that's bad.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I
actually
haven't
one.
had that experience, thankfully.
I've had one too that Brian and I won't mention the cigar because it came off way worse than I wanted it to be. But we were smoking it, doing what we call Herford heads, right? Which is where we get on video. At the time was Skype, and we're reviewing a cigar together on video. And I remember saying, we're talking about, he was like, yeah, yeah, it's like it's got this like weird metallic-y tinny flavor to it. I'm like, yeah, you know what it reminds me of? Like if you ever put pennies in your mouth and then somebody came and punched you in the nose to where the blood, now your mouth's filling with blood because your nose is bleeding, and
All
that
that
penny flavor.
iron mixed with the with
Yeah.
copper or
And I
zinc. Oh
said that,
shit.
and I'm like, man, that sounds really fucked up. But that's what I got. That's what I was thinking at the
Just
time.
so
That's what I
much
got.
metallic flavor. Wow. Oh
Yeah,
man. Oh
it was
gosh.
bad. And we actually lost the advertiser over it. But it is what it is. You got to be truthful in this, what you get. So I don't know. You got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Yeah. So I asked this question. I had Charlie Minato on a couple weeks ago, and he has long lamented how stressful and strenuous and the review process is for him personally. And I asked him the same question, and do you enjoy it? So do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy reviewing cigars still?
Yeah, even though, be honest, since our move to Dallas, I've taken a break, to be honest. And part of that is because the move. It's just it's tough to move and keep up with all that stuff. And Brian and I both have gotten in our jobs where we're super busy, and Brian's actually doing Beer Guys Radio, to where he's a big beer guy. Everybody that knows him knows he's huge into beers. He's actually a home brewer, so well that he's actually won a gold medal in the state of Georgia for actually a couple of his home brews.
Oh
So
wow.
he's been doing a lot of that too on their radio shows. Actually broadcast all over the country on radio stations. So it's a big deal, right? So he's been doing a lot of that. So like both of us have taken a hiatus from doing it, but I'm trying to get back to doing it now because like I said, we I moved here to Dallas, and until recently it's been ungodly hot. And as you can see, I'm outside where I have to be outside to where I'm at now to smoke cigars and do reviews. And when it's so hot, it's miserable. This cigar is not going to be good. Like I'm sure you run into this where when you're smoking a cigar, how good that cigar is goes off of your situation at the time.
Yeah.
If you're mad or you're upset about something, that cigar is not going to taste good. I don't give a shit what it is, right? But if you're in a really good place, you're super happy, it's a great situation or whatever, that cigar is going to taste a lot better to you than it would normally, right? So if I'm sitting out here, it's 107 degrees like it was here for a couple of weeks at that time, and it's just, you, I mean, I can't smoke when it's that hot. So I basically even try to get reviews out, but I actually wrote my first review that we posted tomorrow to get back on Stogie Review now. And we're starting to put out more stuff. One of our biggest segments is it's a lot of fun. It's fun for me to do, and Brian loves it. He actually started it. It's called the Weekend Smoke, where it's not really a review, right? It's like a little um, synopsis of different cigars we've had that week. Like I'm smoking this La Aurora 107 Nicaragua. And I'll just say, hey, I smoked this week, and I got this out of it, this and this. Little brief little segment about it, and we'll do a full review of it later, or we've had a full review of it. I'm revisiting it and stuff like that. And so we're people really like that segment too. So we're doing some of those again. But yeah, there's several times that I've got burnt out from it because it gets to be like such a chore and a job,
Hmm.
to where when you're doing the review, it's like work, right? You don't get like a ton of enjoyment out of it. It's a lot of work to do all that,
Yeah.
you know, especially to express what you're thinking and putting it out there. That's why I actually prefer doing video reviews, because I can express it a lot better when I'm on video talking about it than I start typing it up, because my brain is going in a million different directions and it's hard to focus it to put it into words what I'm thinking when I have like five different thoughts running through my head.
Right.
You know?
So again, going backwards a little bit in tonight's show, you've done hundreds of interviews at trade shows and outside of the trade show and everything like that. And I know you spend most of your time behind the camera. For the most part, Brian heads up a lot of the show interviews that you do at the show and everything. But so this is a part of, not just the one that you were actually interviewing the person. What's one of the weirdest interviews that you've actually been a part of?
The weirdest interviews. Huh.
Most unusual. Maybe went a different direction than you were not counting on necessarily.
I mean, any interview with Jonathan Drew, is always fun, right? Because you never know, because he's so bombastic and going all over the place. It's hard to keep him focused, and he'll be going all over the place, and a lot of the Drew statements are good. If we do anything with Dirty Fabian with the acid stuff,
yeah,
you don't know where that's going to go.
You don't.
That one's always crazy, right? So probably anything with Drew Estate's always exciting. It's always fun. Probably that, yeah. The one that we did the 20th anniversary acid with Dirty Fabian, that one was crazy. He was quite a character, Probably that one.
Mm. So I think you already answered this one. It was the Henke Kellner one the impromptu interview with Henke. Was that the one you were the most nervous for, or was it another one?
Yeah, no, that one by far was that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because he is like the ultimate legend in the cigar world, right? And he's somebody that nobody gets to talk to. He doesn't do interviews. You can't.
I've had the opportunity, but yes, it's very rare. Very rare.
Yeah, it was super. I think at the time when I did that, nobody had interviewed him in our world, in the blog sphere. Nobody's talked to him. So that was ultra special to me. And the whole time I was thinking, don't fuck this up. That's all I was thinking of the whole time. So that one was definitely the most nervous.
Yeah.
Most of them we have several people that it's so fun and free flowing. It's so much fun to do. They're great to do, but that was definitely my most nervous by far. Yeah.
So, we've been talking a lot about the trade show, Ben, and I know the last time you were on my show, we were talking about the cancellation of the trade show and with it. But one thing that hadn't happened yet was the furloughs. And, PCA announced that the entire PCA team was being furloughed. Pretty much they did an about face almost immediately, brought back the executive director and executive counsel and Joshua Habersky and Scott Pierce. And they've been kind of manning the ship, and they brought this past Monday, they were able to bring back Lisa Cox, but there's still several members of that staff that are still being furloughed at this time. When news of the furlough came down, I know you and I actually both were not on that call.
Yeah.
Me, I always say my invitation got lost in the mail or was confused with, I am a member of the Cigar Coop team, and so Coop was there. So I was represented, so to speak. But you actually didn't get an invitation, which I don't want to make too much about necessarily. You can add on, you could certainly elaborate on if you would, but when you heard the news, nonetheless, what, again, how did you take that, and what was your initial response to, this executive team being furloughed?
It was baffling, and it didn't make any sense, because they did it at the time that we needed them the most to fight for us. So I didn't understand it. All the issues that were going on with PCA, and you lay off everybody. How are you going to fix the issues you have and also fight for the cigar industry against the FDA if you're basically just almost dissolve the whole thing? It was so baffling. It was like, this is the dumbest thing they could have done. Like, if you want to list the dumbest shit you could possibly do at the time, that would be number one probably for me. I didn't understand it whatsoever. I don't know what they were thinking. I still don't know, because they don't talk to nobody. They don't, they kind of, it's like the emperor, we'll do what we want and you just deal with it, kind of thing. But it was just baffling to me. I didn't understand what they were thinking behind that. I mean,
Did you participate in the town hall that happened this week that they hosted? The
no,
PCA and CRA hosted together. Uh, First of all, it was a very informative call. Really, some great great people in the cigar industry got to speak and talk about their position and what what the organization and their collective organizations, because other people outside of PCA directly spoke as well during that town hall. The PCA and CRA need to learn the definition of what a town hall is, because there were very little questions. It was mostly a collective
yeah,
collective group of statements, basically. But
yeah,
um, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about that town hall, and I unfortunately I can't ask you to comment because you didn't see it, but Scott Pierce, the executive director and of PCA and the executive director of CRA until at least 4 weeks from now when he steps down formally, Glenn Loop,
yeah.
did not make they were there on the call, but they did not speak, and so I thought that was interesting as well. As we kind of take this trip through all this COVID nonsense, I mean, 2020 has just been a tumultuous year for the PCA, and I've beat this dead horse quite a bit on this, but I think we kind of have to ask these questions and everything. So with the quote unquote big four pulling out, and then the COVID hitting, and other companies pulling out of the trade show, and then the other companies stating that they would go, and then the ultimate cancellation, and now the furloughs and everything. I mean, does PCA 2021 happen in Ben Lee's mind right now?
I don't know how. I don't know how. I don't, how do you have a trade show when you have no staff? You're still. It seems to me you're still not listening to your members. It's almost like you just do what I say, just do what I tell you to do. I mean, I don't know how they're going to pull it off. How are you going to do that? Especially when you got TPE coming to town, that is basically doing all the right things that you should be doing yourself, right? How they gonna pull that off? Especially just with no staff is the main point of that. How do you pull something like that off with no staff? You're not gonna be able to do it. It just I don't. They do so many things that just doesn't. I don't. It does. It's just baffling to me. I don't understand what they do. You know. I mean, what the biggest complaint is, they don't listen to their own members, or they're not inclusive with everybody. They make all decisions and statements and all, but they don't really include anybody. They got that own little inner cabal that they only deal with and they talk about. It's like I don't know. It's just like their own little sound room. They talk to each other, make decisions for this massive group of people, and don't include anybody. Doesn't seem like. So they got so many internal problems. It's unbelievable. I don't know how you pull off a trade show with that.
I mean, a big concern that you and I and the industry has to have too is the fact that TPE 2021 was postponed till May, which basically puts it 60 days prior to when PCA 2021 is supposed to occur. I mean, what is in your mind? I mean, first of all, I mean, is Stogie Review planning to go to both shows currently? Is that the plan, or
No, we honestly we can't afford to go to both shows.
so?
It's
So if you got to choose, I mean, again, this is October 5th we're talking about, you know, and crystal ball in hand. I mean, what does Stogie Review do? Do they go to PCA like they always have, or do you take a shot at TPE, or what do you think?
I mean, be honest, I would love it if we could possibly go to both because I think you get so much different information from both shows. I mean, we would probably still choose PCA because the majority of the cigar manufacturers would be there more than TPE. Even though you're missing the big four, that's a huge block of people that we interact with that we get a lot of information from. That would be a huge loss.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're looking for you know a good amount of content, we would still have to go to PCA if they pull that off. You know, I guess we'll find out when it gets closer to that time if they can even pull that off again. But hell, I don't know. I'm thinking it might be just TPE next year, and we'll probably end up going to TPE because that might be the only trade show. You know,
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is concerning. Like, I think the next 60 days is probably going to be very crucial for the PCA as far as being able to get any kind of trade show off the ground. You know, Ed Ryan's in the chat right now, and he said that thinks there'll be an event called PCA 2021, but the show as we know it will basically cease to exist. Ed, if I'm characterizing your words right, if I'm mischaracterizing you, I apologize. But I think there's some merit to that position for sure, and I think there's something to,
yeah,
again, I think the next 60 days are crucial if you want to have any kind of semblance of a trade show of any kind, whether it's this like it was before or different in a different capacity. So it is going to be something different. Um, so Ben, you know what, we've been chatting for almost 3 hours now, and I really definitely want to thank you. I know that Sunday nights are always family time. I know you've got a wonderful wife, a wonderful child, and I know you would rather be spending your time with them than sitting with me if you had the choice. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your time with me this evening. I do have a couple more questions, but I always take this time here towards the end of the show to kind of thank folks for giving me part of their family time. So I really appreciate it. So thank you.
no problem, man. I love doing this. It's awesome.
So my last serious question before we get into my curveball segment. So the latest FDA decision, you know, that really basically put, you know, substantial equivalence on the literal back burner. And it was a beautiful, beautiful decision in the premium cigar industry's favor, because the FDA didn't, you know, speaking of, we talked about something, another company mailing something in. It seemed like that was the court's position, that the FDA had kind of mailed it in. They were resting on their laurels, expecting the court to favor, decide with them because of precedent or because of history or because of context or because of, popularity, popular belief that tobacco is evil, that they were basically going to win. And the judge was just not having it. They didn't prove their case. Continually, he stated that in his positions, that, they failed to argue their position accordingly. They failed to show proof. They failed on a number of fronts. And that was a beautiful moment and a beautiful victory for the premium cigar industry. But ultimately, I think that this is just a pause button, a very serious pause. And anytime you can delay any kind of legislation, and any kind of regulation is ultimately a good thing. But ultimately, I mean, what do you think? Are the deeming regulations an inevitability that we're just going to keep fighting until it finally does occur? Or do you think that, we could ultimately squeak out an ultimate victory here? What do you think?
I don't think there'll be an ultimate victory because everybody wants to just go back to the way it was. I don't think that'll happen. But the way I saw it was, to me, this whole time, I've always thought premium cigars and pipe tobacco, because I smoke pipes too. Pipe tobacco was collateral damage for this, right?
Right.
Because all originally what it was like, I think the flavored stuff was something that they wanted to look at better. But I think this is more about vapes, e-cigarettes, stuff like that, more
Mm-hmm.
than it was about premium tobacco, right? I just think it was all lumped in because it was just tobacco. All
Right.
of it was
Common
just
denominator,
tobacco,
man. Absolutely.
right? And I think the FDA, they politically they have to tackle the subject, but they almost seem like they don't really care, almost a little bit. Like
Yeah.
like we have to do something because politically we're being told up high that we need to do something, but this is not really an issue. It's just it's almost like not worth our time to deal with this,
Well, they don't have the
honestly.
time. They don't have the resources. They don't have the bandwidth to do it. They
Right?
admitted as much
Yeah,
because they
and they
don't
don't.
know what they're talking about. They finally admitted what we've been screaming from the mountaintop.
Yeah, like I said, their big focus was vapes and e-cigarettes, stuff like that. That's what they're focusing on. They barely have they barely have the resources to deal with that. So to tackle something that we're fighting very hard, it's going to take a lot more resources they don't have to try to fight back with. doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So I think I'm looking at this more of a cup half full than half empty, as to where like maybe the FDA could at least say like, look, we tried, we can't deal with this right now, you know. Now, will they try to come back and maybe go after them for the flavored stuff later? Probably, I
Yeah.
would think. But like the cigars we're enjoying right now, I think they'll probably figure like at least say, look, we tried. We took the check mark like we on the list. Yeah, we tried it. It's not worth our time. We don't have the resources to deal with this. We're going to move on from this. Maybe we'll come back later to it. And I don't think they probably will, to be honest. You know,
Here's hoping. Here's hoping for sure. Um, well, thank you, Ben. Again, I really do appreciate your time tonight. And so that my final question of the night is always fun. It's my curveball segment, and I always kind of it's more like a softball. But I unfortunately I think tonight's probably going to be the hardest question I've ever given in the curveball segment because I'm basing it off of our one must go. But um, so I I'm going to ask. This is going to be a two-parter. Okay. So I'm gonna narrow it down to Mississippi State football. Okay. So if you could, the last Atlanta Braves World Series was in '95. The Saints last Saints Super Bowl was in 2005, correct?
2009.
2009. Well, sorry, that was just post Katrina. That's right, correct. And then and when was the last time Mississippi State football has won a national championship?
Never won one.
Sorry. Okay. So I think I answered my own question here, but what is the one that if you could only pick one to see a championship? And based on your choice in one must go, I think I know
Yeah,
the answer, but what's the one you got to see again? If you could
I
only
would. I would love to see Mississippi State win a national championship,
okay.
but it's really hard when you're in not only the SEC but in a division that what just the last 10 years has won most of the national championships. LSU, Auburn, and Alabama, and now Texas A&M are all in that one in the SEC West. It's kind of hard for we're small compared to most colleges to compete. Like we're surrounded by all those colleges. So when you have somebody like Nick Saban walking into a kid's, their like family room talking to the parents and the kid, and they can say like, okay, you can go to Mississippi State and be the starting quarterback, or you can come to Alabama. While he's wearing like 4 championship rings on one hand, he can barely move his hand around. He's so heavy with the championship rings. It's hard to get 5-star recruits to come to our school.
Right.
And we're literally surrounded. And you got Tennessee to the north of us that, they've been pretty bad the past decade or so. So basically since Phil Former left. But still, they still have that, that history behind them.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to recruit to get past that. Like I said, 1998 when I was there, we won the SEC West over all those teams. So it can be done. It can definitely be done. But that would be my choice for sure.
You know, the stat that I love about speaking of Tennessee, I always love the stat that I heard about Neyland Stadium there in Knoxville.
Mhm.
So on game day, the stadium, okay, not the city of Knoxville, but the stadium, Neyland Stadium, is the third most populous, if you could characterize it as a city, but it's the third most populous city in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, I think they hold 117,000 people in that stadium.
Yeah, third
Or
most
some shit.
It's insane. It's a huge state, and they keep
Yeah.
building up because they can't build out. So they keep building up. They keep
Right.
adding levels, and it's a coliseum. Shouldn't be Neyland Stadium. It should be Neyland Coliseum. One of my favorite stats about the University of Tennessee. Okay, so I said this was a two-parter. Okay, so now you got to pick the opposite of it, which of those three do you pick to never win again?
Well, Mississippi State, they've never won anything. So that's
But no, no, no,
easy.
no, not no. That you would say, okay, I could go the
Never
rest
win
of my
again?
life. I could go the rest of my life with Mississippi State's out because obviously they were answer to your first question.
Right.
You want them to win a national championship in football. So between the Braves and the Saints, the rest of your life, you could live without them winning a Super Bowl or a series again. Which one?
Probably the Braves, only because, I was there for that 2009 Super Bowl win right after Katrina. And people don't understand how much that meant to our area after that happened. And our area back home where I'm from, and so everybody lives and dies with the Saints. Everything like stuff on Sunday stops when the Saints game comes on, right? And I mean, like one of the greatest games that's ever been played, uh, for not just me, but people voted on this for ESPN, was that first game back in the Superdome where we absolutely destroyed the Atlanta Falcons, who everybody detests. That's a Saints fan. Everybody hates Atlanta big time, and to beat them so soundly to where that it got to be so bad the Atlanta Falcons couldn't even call in plays. They couldn't even hear on the radio in the helmets. They couldn't even hear it because the fans were so loud. That place was rocking. You know, Steve Gleason blocking that punt. I mean, now he has ALS and he's like you know he's like a big figure in New Orleans and especially the Saints, but the whole city of New Orleans. There's a statue up in Champion Square of him with that block punt. That meant so much to that area that it's you can't calculate. People that's not from the area don't really understand. Like everybody knows it was a big deal, but if you're not from that area, went through what we went through during that time,
Yeah,
you don't understand how big sports was to bring hope back to the area after such a devastating thing happened to that area.
yeah,
So, I mean, that was something else. And to go that franchise has gone through so much. I mean, the Bagheads, the Aints. I mean, that team was so bad for so long that now they got a Super Bowl and now it's foregone conclusion they'll be in the playoffs. It means so much to the area that you know where not saying nothing about the Braves. The Braves are just they're in the Southeast. That's a team. Everybody loves the Braves. It's hard to run into somebody that's not a Braves fan in the Southeast, but to me, Atlanta's not a great sports town. They love the Braves, but you know, you probably have more fans outside of Atlanta that are Braves fans, more rabid Braves
yeah.
fans than people in Atlanta, the way I see it. So,
Well, yeah. Well, the way you think about like the Falcons, the Hawks, the Thrashers, like no one really talks about those teams for the most part. It is the
yeah,
Braves. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
That it is a Braves town. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I have colleagues that, our sister office for a company I work during my day job, is based in Atlanta. And so like all of my colleagues over there are huge, rabid Braves fans. They don't really
yeah,
talk about the Hawks. They don't really talk about the Falcons. They
yeah.
definitely don't talk about hockey. So, it's 100%. You're absolutely right. The Braves, the Braves, the Braves. So, well, Ben, I'm eternally grateful. Thank you so much for sitting down with me tonight. Really, really enjoyed diving into the history of you, the history of Stogie Review, what you guys have meant to this industry, the way you pioneered trade show coverage, giving people like me the opportunities that I've had. Um, if you hadn't done what you did, Coop wouldn't have been able to have the amazing success that he's had. He wouldn't have brought me on to have the amazing, partnership that I've had with him, and then the creation of this show where I can sit down and talk with amazing folks like you and some other folks that we've talked about tonight. Klaus Kellner and people like that I've had on the show numerous times, and it's been a thrilling ride. So it's great to actually sit down and talk with you specifically about all that you've done for this industry in your time. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I mean, I love it. I appreciate you having me on here. It's always a lot of fun, to talk with everybody. So I appreciate you inviting me on.
Well, and that thanks especially to our audience as well who hung in with us, man. We went to 3 hours on this, and we digressed quite a bit, but we had a lot of fun. It was I equated to that cigar shop talk, man. We bobbed and weaved, and we digressed, and we did offshoots, and we had a lot of fun talking tonight, smoking some good cigars. I enjoyed my Pachardo Maduro and my Nat Sherman Panamericana. What's Ed Ryan's begging to know, man. I know he's in the chat right now. What are you thinking of the La Aurora 107 Nicaragua? What's the mini verdict on that so far?
I actually really like it. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a spice bomb than it was. It is spicy. It's got a little bit of a spice kick, but it's full bodied, and it's pretty tasty, man. They blended this pretty well. I'm impressed.
And you were sipping on some Michter's tonight, right?
Yep, the American whiskey.
Yeah, I've been enjoying some little sips here and there of some Coralejo Tequila Anejo, and enjoying some seltzer along with it. Didn't get too carried away on the spirits tonight, but I enjoyed the conversation, Ben, and I appreciate our audience. Appreciate all your likes, shares, and comments, everybody. Thanks for catching us on Facebook Live tonight. If you catch us on Facebook, make sure you go to our Facebook page, ELOSOFUMAR, and like it. We're almost up to 700 likes, so we're climbing the charts, so to speak. And we've got some great shows coming up in the next few weeks for you. Definitely want to scope that out. Tonight's was our 139th take. For our 140th take next week, really excited to welcome in Jeff Hogan of Crux Cigars. He'll be on my show next week. Yeah, Jeff's a great guy.
I love Jeff.
I've known him for a few years now. I've had Casey on the show a couple of times. Casey's a great guy as well. So this will be an interesting delving into. Jeff's got a great story too, and so I'm really excited to talk about his time in retail, the building of Crux, and that'll be a great story. We've got George Rami of Camacho Cigars, and then my birthday show later this month. I'll be having on some of my industry favorites to kind of celebrate my birthday and kind of talk about a potpourri of subjects, and not to celebrate. It won't be totally self-serving. It won't be a celebration of me, but it'll be a celebration on my birthday eve. And Jason Loyce with his new found cigar brand that he is starting with Veritas as the new CEO of that company as well. Tim Wong will be on to celebrate our anniversary in early November, and mid-November rounds out with a special show, a little something different on ELOSOFUMARTAKES. I did a show last year with Miguel Shodell commemorating the anniversary of Field of Dreams. So we're going to take on another anniversary in film. The 20th anniversary of Gladiator.
Whoa.
A movie movie and film that I absolutely adore and love. And I got a couple of fans of that movie as well. And Justin Andrews, people know him as the brand ambassador for Diesel Cigars. And Sam Spencer of McAuliffe will be on that show with me. We'll be talking all things Gladiator that night and talking a little cigars too. But I promised Justin a reprieve from Cigar Talk. So we'll be having a good amount of time on that as well. So really excited about the upcoming guests. You can always check that out. If you are a subscriber to our show, if you're listening to our show later on wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review. If you already are a subscriber, don't forget to unsubscribe. But please, please, please don't forget to resubscribe. It really helps my ratings and helps me bring on great guests like Ben Lee tonight. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate it all. For everyone out there, this was our 139th take. Live from the HF Barcelona studios of Euless, Texas. I'm your host, as always, Barry Duplessis. And guess what, everyone? We'll see you next time.